Anthony says he hears you guys loud and clear.
Okay.
I was just looking at NBC5 just a few minutes ago, and the roads still look a mess. This is wild.
Yeah, today was supposed to be like the worst morning because of the melting and then refreeze.
Jeez. I just put in my GPS. If I were to leave my house right now to drive to the studio, it would take me 1 hour and 21 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day, guys.
It's
We're not
yeah,
even
I think so. It's supposed to be like 43 degrees today.
what's it supposed to be tomorrow? Oh yeah, 53. Oh yeah, 33 tomorrow morning.
That's
We're
good.
good. We're good.
We're gonna make it.
By the time we go to work, it'll be 34.
All right, guys, 2 minutes.
How about those cats last night?
So close.
2 point lead, 4 point lead, 6 minutes to go.
They
I had
played
I,
better and
I had the text ready.
they
The
played
text. We are
they,
so back. It was so ready. And then
they played better in the second half and still lost.
yeah, it's not good. Not good.
All right. We got 1 minute. I'm gonna turn the audio on.
Okay.
Fantastic. Hey, this is Lainey Wilson. Just real country music. It's always on. It's right here on the big 615 on TuneIn. Always. Big 12 radio on TuneIn. Your source for all things Big 12. College football is streaming on TuneIn. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and listen to live play-by-play coverage. Zone for a touchdown. Plus, TuneIn Premium subscribers can enjoy commercial-free music, news, and sports talk, so you can get back to the action faster. Just search Premium or tell your device, listen to sports on TuneIn to get into the game.
Heard exclusively on TuneIn, watching us on Big 12 Studios. We are brought to you, the full-time fan, by Modelo. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. We have Taman Turner producing On the audio side, our guy Anthony Smith. On the video side, on the Big 12 Studios, the Big 12 Fast channel. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. We are power ranking our top 5 Big 12 basketball teams today. And then in hour number 2, Keenan Cummings, the managing editor for West Virginia, WVSports.com, their On3 affiliate, will be on the program after West Virginia picks up a quality road win, or home win, I should say, against Kansas State last night. And then our transfer portal tracker series continues. Hard to believe we're already to the Arizona State Sun Devils. We've been breaking down the offseason for each and every Big 12 school. We started at the bottom of the Big 12 standings, and today we've worked our way up towards the upper echelon of the Big 12 with Arizona State. It is a wheels-off Wednesday. As you can tell, we are remote, hopefully one final time this week for the 3rd day in a row. We should be back in studio tomorrow. Ari, have you ventured out? What was yesterday like? Did you hit the roads? Did you test the roads? Nothing will test a man's patience like cruising the boulevard at 11 miles per hour.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pushing it. Trying to make the most out of a situation that has not been a lot of fun, especially with the situation with my dishwasher. Not having like half of my kitchen has also made this quite challenging. So, good times, man. Super pumped that this city is completely decimated by, what would be considered unseasonably warm winter temperatures in the north.
Well, I would say based off of your tone, your spirits are high.
Very high. Couldn't be higher. Maybe as high as Rutgers. Who knows?
Off-season optimism is mandatory. How's the kitchen project, by the way? Can we get a quick update? Like, I'll be honest, I thought that was all. I thought it was done. I thought you guys were cruising. I thought you had a new kitchen. Been waiting to hear all about it. Come over.
Yeah,
have
I
some
mean, as I'm
snacks.
sure you're well aware, dealing with insurance and with with a project like this at this scope of this magnitude, it's usually you just snap your fingers and it's done. No, we've got to move out of the house on Friday. They're gonna have to redo all the floors in the first floor. It's a lot of fun. It's super fun. But it could be a lot worse. I could be not talking sports with you here, so there's always that.
All right, I'm struggling to read the sarcasm meter. You actually have to move out of your own house.
Yeah. Well, you think I'm joking?
I don't know. Clearly, I don't now. I don't anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah. They've got to put new floors in the kitchen, which are the same floors they have over the entire first floor of the house. And so they have to then match those floors by sanding the floors down and then staining them. So because they need to do that to the floors, everything in this house has to be picked up and moved to a storage facility, including us.
We've got to circle back to this towards the end of the show and come up with some ideas how we can help make this situation flow a little more smoothly for you guys.
I'm sure if anybody's got great advice, it's you and ChatGPT for sure.
Oh. All right. You mentioned Rutgers and the hole that they're in, but real quick, I had a research project that I dove into last night that I want to get your thoughts on, if that's okay.
Okay.
When is ESPN and the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee going to start talking about Big 12 basketball in the same way that ESPN and the College Football Playoff Committee talks about SEC football? Because SEC football is the gold standard, according to ESPN. Their commissioner saying we should have 7 teams in the college football playoff. All the hype and everything that we've talked about for months on the football side. Well, I went and I looked at the SEC football, their final rankings, records, all that jazz, and compared it to the Big 12 basketball as we sit here today. There are 5 Big 12 teams in the top 12 of the net rankings. There are 5 Big 12 teams in the top 15 of the KenPom rankings and 6 Big 12 teams in the top 17 of KenPom's analytical rankings. And then I looked at the NFL draft compared to the NBA draft. The SEC is projected to have only one player drafted in the top 10 in this upcoming NFL draft, 2026. The Big 12 is multiple NBA mock drafts have 3 Big 12 players going in the top 5, 4 Big 12 players in the top 10. So the SEC is producing numbers in the NFL draft, sure. But when it comes to this year, the Big 12 is producing stars. So why is there even any discussion about who the best conference in America is when it comes to college basketball? And comparing, I know they're different sports, but the two leagues, it is clear to me that the Big 12 checks every box in terms of resumes, difficulty in this league with scheduling night in and night out, and then that elite NBA-ready talent in this conference.
Well, I mean, I would think comparatively, and it feels like I've been watching a lot more Peacock than I have ESPN in terms of their basketball coverage. But I would think that when it came down to talking about the best conference in America, it wouldn't even be a discussion. I mean, because I think that's pretty obvious who it is, both from a resume and from a talent standpoint, front end talent. I mean, I was watching Michigan, Nebraska last night,
Mm-hmm.
and if those are the two best teams in the Big Ten, I mean, my goodness, I know they weren't, maybe they were both having off shooting nights, but basically, I mean, both teams were like 1 of 15 from 3 in the second half. And I mean, just like the Nebraska best player, this guy who's helped to lead this crew to 20-0 and now 20-1, who's got a very difficult name to pronounce, but he's 7'2", and like he kept missing bunnies inside. It's like, what? This is the best of the Big Ten? Seriously? Like, there's 4 or 5 teams in the Big 12 that would mop the floor with these two teams. So yeah, I mean, I think you're hit the nail on the head there in terms of, does the coverage match the dominance of this league? And, I mean, we've been hearing Brett Yormark say it, and I think it's worth repeating. Like the Big 12 basketball, especially this season, is the second best basketball league in the world. And there's tons of them and tons of great leagues, tons of great players, but the Big 12 has it all.
I would even say, and I'm with you on the Big Ten. So right now in the top 12 of the KenPom, beg your pardon, top 10. The top 10 KenPom ratings as of today. There are 3 Big 12 teams. There are 5 Big 10 teams, and then Gonzaga and Duke are the only two not from one of these two leagues. But when you look at the Big 12 and the Big 10 side by side, I don't think the SEC is even in the conversation this year. Like their highest rated team is 11th, and it's Vanderbilt. And then you look at their second best team, which would be Florida, who won at Vanderbilt last week midweek.
Yeah, and that's their best team.
And Florida has a loss in the non-conference to TCU. Those two teams you watched last night, Nebraska and Michigan, Kansas State had Nebraska beat in the non-conference. Nebraska grabbed an offensive rebound off a missed free throw, won the game. And then TCU took Michigan to the wire, 67-63 back in November. Like Michigan, the best team clear and away in the Big Ten, most would say, has a 4-point win over the 7th or 8th best team in the Big 12. And then Florida, the best team, I agree with you on paper in the SEC or eye test, whatever, has a loss to TCU, and Kansas State has a 1-point loss to Nebraska. Like these are the middle of these, the middle of the pack Big 12 teams going toe to toe with the upper echelon teams in these other conferences. Says a lot about the depth of this league in the fact that, yeah, it is really top heavy with all these elite stars on the floor, but the league top to bottom, no doubt to me, is the best in America.
Well, and I mean, I think this is the week of all weeks for the Big 12 to really shine from an ESPN perspective, because it's the second week in a row where ESPN College Game Day will be on a Big 12 campus. It's the top 2 picks based on the betting odds in the upcoming NBA draft, which of course is a staple on ESPN. So yeah, I mean, I think to your point, like this is the week for this to be happening.
The NFL draft and NBA comparison that I did was fascinating to me, that only one SEC player is expected to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft. And the top 3 picks right now, according to Yahoo Sports, they have the most recent mock draft. They just did one like 14 hours ago. The top 3 picks are guys that are either from Indiana or Miami, which to me magnifies that the college football playoff matters. And the SEC not having teams playing for the national championship matters and should hurt their pedigree when you look at all the league's big picture.
Well, I'll tell you the other way that the Big Ten is embarrassing itself, if that's what you were getting at. Rutgers. So, James, you found this topic, and I, was trying to look into it because basically Rutgers is admitting openly that they have record level revenues, but also they've lost over $500 million since joining the Big Ten 11 years ago. And so it's a pretty substantial headline. And when you dig into it, you're like, wow, I can't believe they're like openly admitting to this.
Right.
So basically, Rutgers Athletics brought in 147 million total this past year, which includes 61 million from the Big Ten's TV media deal and 10 million from Big Ten bowl revenue. Okay, so Rutgers, not a bowl team, still ended up with $72 million based on their TV rights and bowl revenue. 72 million. They also get about 8 million from donors, which is insanely low, especially when you consider that they have some of the highest enrollment in the country. So in looking at this, they spent 46 million on coaches, 31 million on support staff and administrators, 23 million on athletic scholarships. So think about that. They spent $7 million more on support staff and administrators than on athletic scholarships across the board. 14 million for paying off facilities debt, 13 million on team travel, and 8 million on athlete meals. So they spent 194 million and brought in 147 million. So they have a $47 million operating loss for this fiscal year. And basically every year they've been they've had a loss since 2014, 2015. And now those losses have equaled $516 million. Okay. They have, just comparatively to the Big 12, would be one of the biggest schools in the Big 12. And that operating revenue would be the most in the Big 12. I mean, this is great for a comparison standpoint because you see some of these teams that were born on third base that still can't seem to make it work. And Rutgers has a new athletic director that's basically like, we've got to slash the debt. And it's like, whoa, look at what you're spending on coaches and support staff. That might be a good place to start. But also, how on earth are you making $70 million a year in TV money and bowl revenue alone, and you're still not able to make that work? That is insane. And they're openly admitting it. They're like, yeah, that's us. We don't know how to spend money. We're bringing in a ton of it. We've set records in revenue, but we have no idea how to spend it. Can you help us? This is, I mean, for crying out loud.
$500 million over the last decade. And a school that has one of the largest enrollments in the country. It's a massive school. And then also, like we talked about last week, teams are spending 70, 80 grand on private jets, like college football and some of these schools trying to keep up in that league with the Michigan, Penn State, Ohio States of the world simply can't. And they have a spending problem, which is magnified by this. This also magnifies to me that most of these power conferences outside of the Big 12, even though the Big 12 on paper was more top heavy, like these other leagues are elite at the top, sure, but they are very hollow at the bottom. And it's not just Rutgers. It's Maryland who's struggling. It's Purdue who's struggling in these other leagues. Like the gap between this Rutgers problem and a Michigan, Ohio State, or a Mississippi State and Texas, the Big 12 is built differently. Like the competitive balance, I think, is something that the league can lean into, especially for next year when you look at like Oklahoma State's been the worst team in the conference the last 2 years. But they've got a huge injection now in NIL. They're not bleeding money like Rutgers is. And they've got a new coach in Eric Morris who's loaded up in the portal. And all of a sudden, like the bottom of the Big 12 isn't anywhere close to me to the bottom of some of these other conferences.
Well, and I think, like the Big 12 and member institutions have had to really tighten the belt here and look at the, expenditures and revenues and make some decisions. And it's as if some of these schools that, were born on third base here that get, 70 plus million in revenue alone from TV and bowl money, which is significantly more than any Big 12 or ACC school is getting at this point in time. Like it's almost as if they see this big money coming in and like they just continually increase expenditures without really looking at like the debt side of it. And so like, again, whereas in the Big 12, these are schools that have had to figure out ways to tighten the belt. Like some of these other schools in the ACC, the SEC and the Big 10 have not done that and gone through that. And it's obvious. And, again, like to openly admit that like, yeah, we're one of the, I didn't realize how big Rutgers was.
Yeah.
They have about 70,000 students system wide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's across the Piscataway campus and the New Brunswick campus, 50,000 at the New Brunswick campus, 50,000 students at their New Brunswick campus, which is more than many of the schools in the Big 12. So like and by the way, enrollment has stayed stagnant. It has not, they've not, had a decrease in enrollment. It's pretty much stayed the same. So, they have continued to increase expenditures. They probably should take a deeper look at who they're hiring and why they're hiring them and why it's costing them so much money. They're basically spending as much as they're bringing in football, TV money, and bowl money on coaches and support staff. That seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. And Rutgers, Rutgers is massive, dude. It's a huge school. And the bubble of college football and the spending side, so athletic expenses being up 175% since they joined the league in 2014. I mean, that's almost 3 times as much as they were spending when they entered the league. Like that is insane.
Yeah. And just a reminder, like sometimes you'll hear some of these numbers and be like, wow, how are they in this much debt or how have they lost this much money? College athletics doesn't bring in as much money as I thought. There's some truth to that, certainly, but like this is just wild spending and people just not at all paying attention to budgets. And, I mean, this is clearly their own issue and their own, a issue of their own doing in a way that I don't know that, any Big 12 school could equal this, and just shows how much better the Big 12 is at sort of balancing budgets. One last thing, James. So interesting story that came out yesterday where the Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, has said no to Bill Belichick. Did you see this?
Yes, I did.
He did not get 80% of the vote. Do you know how many Super Bowls Bill Belichick has won?
A lot. 6?
6. The dude won 6 Super Bowls. He went to 2 others. Like, okay, we all have our own things to say about Bill Belichick, but I mean, this is ridiculous. And it's funny because only the writers, the holier than thou writers for the Pro Football Hall of Fame could make Bill Belichick appear sympathetic. Like, I'm sorry. You'd have to be pretty bad at your job to not evaluate Bill Belichick's career as the head coach of the Patriots. And before that, as a defensive coordinator and some of the things and teams he was associated with the Giants, et cetera, and be like, yeah, that's not a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer. Like that, it's just some of these writers, man, they're so holier than thou. It's crazy. Like, do not mess with those writers. Like, they have the power. They're not afraid to wield that power that they have. It's an absolute joke. And somehow, because of Deflategate or Spygate or Gategate, they're not letting Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame on his first go around. Again, I'm like not the biggest Bill Belichick fan in the world, and understand he can be grouchy and grumpy, but like, come on, he won 6 Super Bowls, went to 2 others. It's a ridiculous joke that the Pro Football Hall of Fame writers decided on this. This is the hill to die on.
Bro, you can't be in the boys club if you're dating a 25-year-old and winning 3 games at North Carolina.
Yeah, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, James. I know. I recognize the hysteria surrounding his current situation. I don't think that has anything to do with it, though. I think it has, and maybe it should, more so than Deflategate and Spygate.
Right. I just wonder if it like clouds their judgment in some way.
Mm.
All right, this is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are powered by Modelo here exclusively on TuneIn. We are power ranking our top 5 Big 12 basketball teams later on this hour. But coming up next, the hidden stat that determines college basketball national champions. And then we'll also look at the latest lineup data from Evan Miyakawa and the NBA Draft Tracker. The analytics don't lie. That is around the corner. He's Ari. I'm James. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league.
John Ball and Masamba Diop Oaks working on Gribovich. Stillwell, big size mismatch. Shovels it to Bull, who hammers it down.
His reverse slams used to be something to see, I'm telling you. Go online and YouTube, Coach Dawkins' reverse jam against UNC. It'll be the best thing to see all day.
Anthony, he made his first triple, hasn't come close on the next two. Kugel all the way, and he delivers a poster of it. Important for a team that doesn't have a ton of depth.
Yeah.
Big Johnson came and took it away from Stillwell, got hurt in the process.
Oh.
Mukema at the other end. My goodness.
But he said how they played in the first half, it's not sustainable. The biggest focus coming into this half is that the offense must continue producing, guys.
A real opportunity right here for Arizona State to push this lead to double figures.
Odom, a clean look at a three, and he buries it. Under 7 minutes to go. Kugel around Mayusin, inside Stillwell, score it plus the foul. Kugel attacking Mayusin, creates some space. He'll kick. Burks with a three. Oh, Jordan Burks! Mayusin, here's Ford. He'll have a chance to tie it. Ford unable to hit, and UCF comes from behind to stun Arizona State.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn. We come to you live on the channel each Monday through Friday, 8A to 11A Eastern Time. Our Big 12 Radio game of the week is Saturday, BYU at Kansas. The top two NBA picks and the upcoming NBA draft will hit the floor together. AJ DeBonsa for BYU, Darren Peterson for Kansas. That game starts at 4 Eastern, 3 o'clock Central Time. You can hear it right here on Big 12 Radio. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. You're also watching us on Big 12 Studios. He's Ari, I'm James, and we have found the hidden stat that determines college basketball national champions. It is a hidden stat. You have to dive deep. And it's not just national champions. So, of the last 5 years, all 20, every single Final Four team over the last 5 years have been in the top right quadrant of this graph that hopefully you're seeing on Big 12 Studios that we're going to break down. That includes 11 seed NC State, 5 seeds San Diego State and Miami, a 9 seed in Florida Atlantic, 8 seed North Carolina, 11 seed UCLA. You get the point. All the Cinderellas that made deep runs with the 1 seeds and the powers and the teams that went on to win the national championship, like Kansas and Baylor and Florida and Houston and UConn, all the teams that were in the national championship game. So to break it down as simply as I can, the graph is adjusted offensive rating, and this is courtesy of college basketball, CBBanalytics.com. So your offensive rating plus your team rebounds and turnovers forced, minus your opponent's rebounds and turnovers forced. So essentially, your offense, your rebounding, and your plus minus in the turnovers. And what's interesting about this graph is that the teams in the upper right-hand corner, there's a lot from the Big 12. Arizona, Houston, Texas Tech. I see Iowa State. I see Kansas inching closer to that threshold. But what are your thoughts when you take a look at this?
Okay, so it's adjusted offensive rating on one side with teams' rebounds, turnovers forced, opponents' rebounds, turnovers forced. So in a sense, it's adjusted offense and adjusted defense, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what it's saying. And ultimately, these are teams that are basically top 50 in both categories. And it's not exactly adjusted defense, but it's certainly stats that play into that, right? Turnovers forced, rebounds, really important components. So, I mean, this shouldn't surprise us at all. Nick Bateman, who has the stat, calls it the very important graph, TM update from CBB Analytics. I think there are a host of different, analytical devices that we use over the course of the college basketball season as indicators of postseason success in college basketball. And they're all sort of dressed up in a similar way. We're basically like, if you've got a top 50 offense and a top 50 defense, you're in pretty good shape. And I think more to the point, like, okay, every national champion is going to be top 25 in adjusted defense. Basically, since 2002, almost every champion ranked top 25 defensively. So there are some outliers, but for the most part, you want to be a national championship team in college basketball, you got to be top 25 in adjusted defense. They're also top 20 in efficiency margin. Champions almost always are top 15, which is the adjusted offense and adjusted defense, the difference. They're also most likely top 40 in offense. So, and top 50 in both, which is basically what we're seeing here in this stat, in this graph. So, like, the gist of it is, you've got to have a really good offense and a really good defense. You probably need to be better, more elite defensively than offensively, but that's not a hard and fast rule. But you probably should be top 50 in both of those categories, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah, and the thing I think I like about it is it takes into account tempo, how many possessions you have per game more than your opponent. So on one axis, you've got the offensive rating, which is how efficiently you score, right? And then on the other axis, it's your net possessions with rebounds plus turnovers forced minus your opponent. So possession bullies, for lack of a better term, and then efficiency on offense, which to me screams Arizona, screams Houston, and now I think Texas Tech has entered that conversation. But 20 for 20 on Final Four teams over the last 5 years came from that upper right-hand corner, that quadrant of teams. Doesn't matter if they were a 1 seed or an 11 seed. And when you look at it, yeah, there's a lot of Big 12 teams in there. And then you look for maybe some sleeper teams, like when you're filling out your bracket, like a St. Mary's or Auburn, who's kind of struggled in relation to their preseason expectations. Yale's in that upper right hand quadrant with South Florida, New Mexico, and Boise State. So come March, we'll see if this holds up. But you're absolutely right. Like, there's also a list of this is courtesy of KenPom. So the top 10 offenses in the country since the beginning of January. So over the last 28 days, 7 of those top 10 offensive teams are outside the top 75 defensively. And the teams that are doing both are right here in the Big 12. Houston, Texas Tech are 2 of the 3 that are playing. Texas Tech and Houston, both top 25 defenses. Houston's got a top 10 defense over the last 28 days. And so, to me, that says that this league has the teams at the top are way more balanced than like an Illinois or a North Carolina or a Wisconsin or even a Purdue, who are really good offensively but struggling on the defensive end.
Yeah, and I think like it makes sense if you are flawed. Yeah, you don't have to be elite in both categories, top 10 in both, though it helps. But if you are highly flawed in one of the areas, you'll be found out in the tournament. Like, bad defenses can't survive 6 games in the NCAA tournament. Limited offenses are going to get schemed out over 6 games. You know, you can win 1 or 2 if you're limited offensively, but over the course of, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where there's weekends between and film watching that goes into it, like, defensively, they will take you out of that and force you to win a different style. And that's why I think playing different styles, being able to win in different ways that maybe you're not accustomed to or comfortable with, is a key contributor to success in the tournament, because you're going up against much different teams. So basically, like, yeah, this all important graph or stat is like, okay, all these teams aren't elite. Like, if you're top 50 in offensive and defensive efficiency, like you're pretty good. You're not elite necessarily in offense and defense, but as long as you're really elite in one and not horribly flawed in the other, you got a pretty good chance to get to a Final Four and win a national championship. The problem is the not highly flawed in the other. That's
right.
And to your point, like, Houston has had one of the best offenses in college basketball since the turn of the year, since January 1st. Now, we know they're going to have a great defense. Texas Tech, we know, has a great offense. How good is their defense? Well, is it top 75, top 25, top 50? So, I mean, I think that's ultimately what we're looking at here. You don't have to be, top 10 in both. You need to be top 50 in both.
Since January 1st, the number 1 offense in America is Illinois, which isn't shocking to me. They just had that Wagner kid go off for 46. They've been a machine on that end. But they're 37th in defense in the last 28 days. North Carolina has the 2nd best offense in the country, but they're 224th in defensive efficiency. Oh, and they're 3-3 during this stretch. Then you get to Houston and Texas Tech, who are 3 and 4 in the country since the turn of the new year in offensive efficiency rating, courtesy of KenPom. Houston is 8th in the country on defense, which is below their standard. And then Texas Tech is top 25. And Texas Tech is only going to get better on the defensive end with the addition of Mosley, the Villanova transfer, who I think is a huge X factor for their postseason chances. And then they're still expecting to get Luke Bamboye back, who led the country in blocks per minutes played when he was on the floor at VCU. He's a long 7-foot sitter, kind of what their Federico was last year for them off the bench, a spark plug guy. So those are 2 teams that I think are right up there with Arizona in terms of legit Final Four national championship caliber teams.
Well, in terms of teams that are top 50 in both offensive and defensive rating via KenPom all over the course of the season, Arizona's top 10 in both, 4th in offense and 3rd in defense. Duke is the only other team that's top 10 in both. Michigan is 2. They're 8 and 2, 8 in offense and 2 in defense. And then Duke is 5th in offense and 4th in defense. But then you look at Texas Tech, they're 7th in offensive rating, 40th in defensive rating. According to that graph, they're in top 50 in both. BYU, 11th in offensive rating, 25th in defensive rating. Maybe better defensively than we thought. Houston, 15th in offensive rating, 7th in defensive rating. So top 15 in both. Iowa State, top 16 in both. They're 16th in offensive rating, 6th in defensive rating. So, I mean, Baylor's 24th in offensive rating, 135th in defensive rating. So now you're getting deeper into it. Kansas is 30th in offensive rating, 13th in defensive rating. So their offensive rating has improved, Kansas. Their defensive rating hasn't taken too much of a step backward. So again, if they're top 50 in both, there's a handful of Big 12 teams that fit that category.
Very much so. And the graph that we went over from Nick Bateman tells me, like, you don't need to be the fastest team.
Right.
You don't have to be the best three-point shooting team. You need to end possessions better than your opponent, which is rebounding, forcing turnovers. And when you look at a team in this league, like let's take Iowa State, for example, during their 2-game slide, they were turning the basketball over a ton. They weren't getting their normal allotment of steals. They were getting hammered on the glass. And then flip it around and look at like a Texas Tech, who during their surge out-rebounded a Houston team by 16. They're not turning the ball over at all. They're averaging like 8 turnovers a game. Oh, and they can hit threes. Like all of that I love the formula of all these different teams in the league come March. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this shouldn't surprise any of us in terms of, how top heavy the conference is. And we'll do our power ranking here coming up and get the top 5 out of the Big 12. But that's a tough top 5 to crack right now. And you can make a pretty good case for 6 or 7 teams to be included in that top 5. And that goes to show you how top heavy this Big 12 is. I think when we looked at like the SEC last year, getting, 11, 12, 13 bids into the tournament.
Yeah.
Like the Big 12's dominance is less so like that and more so, the fact, I think we talked about this yesterday, but based on Joe Lunardi's rankings, there's 7 teams in, but 6 of the 7 are top 4 seeds. So when you think about like that's 6 top 24 teams there.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so I think the Big 12's volume might be down in terms of the overall teams getting into the bid relative to like the SEC last year. But the quality of those teams is so much higher than the SEC's last year, despite winning the national championship. I just mean on the spec, on the whole.
Yeah. I mean, the SEC outside of Florida had a disappointing March Madness tournament. I mean, Florida had a deep run. Auburn got to the Final Four, but kind of snuck their way into the Final Four. Also had by far the easiest region in the tournament last year. I'm with you on that. All right, speaking of power rankings, we're doing that next. Our top 5 Big 12 men's basketball teams, and then a happy birthday shout out to a former Big 12, Pac-12 NBA star. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
$18 points per game better. That is the 10th largest difference in the country. Holmberg's Road. Huff, long trigger. He watches it drop. That is experience with each other, too. 2 guys that both played in North Texas together last year and transferred here when Hodge came over. Haggerty hits the 3, gets knocked down. No whistle. And Manning's there for the rebound.
Job by Nate Johnson to play off of Chance Moore, but I like that shot.
Castillo thought about the 3, drives past Huff and gets the 2 instead. It's been a great second half for Brendan Lorient, but that pass gets picked off. Johnson has it. This time he takes it himself, and a strong finish from Nate Johnson. Well, Lorient backs down Haggerty again.
Well, you got Eagle Staff. There it is.
He's wide open, and he connects. The Mountaineers are back in front, 50-49.
Better late than never.
Huff, step back, rainbow try, rattles in. You could hear a pin drop right now inside Hope Coliseum. Eagle Staff underneath, gets his own miss, gets the make, and the foul. He's going to the line. Haggerty off balance. Of course he scores. That's what he does. And a turnover. West Virginia holds on against Kansas State. Strong effort from the Wildcats coming to Morgantown, but the Mountaineers remain undefeated inside Hope Coliseum.
We're rolling right along here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, powered by Modelo, where off-season optimism is mandatory. Today we'll look at Arizona State's transfer portal class later on during the show. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. And, Ari, what do we say about power rankings?
Look, it's not good enough to just have things in this world, especially roads that continue to be sheets and sheets of ice. You have to power rank them accordingly. I don't know what that had to do with anything. I was just looking out and longingly looking at this street, which I wish would just fix itself. What were you saying? Sorry, what?
Something about power rankings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not good enough to just have things in this world. You have to power rank them accordingly. And so that, my friend, is what we do on Wednesdays. We power rank.
That's what we do on Wednesdays.
Remember, we always wear pants because pants are not optional. But when our pants are on, which we put on one leg at a time on Wednesdays, once they're on, we power rank.
Number 5.
All right, number 5 for me. I've got the Kansas Jayhawks here.
Ooh.
Kansas is working their way up.
Impressed by their win over K-State, I see.
Towards the top of the conference. I just realized who I left out, but I'm doubling down. I've got Kansas at number 5.
You're a smart man.
They've got all the pieces. The defense is getting better. I love what Flory Badunga is doing with the pick and roll game. He was a monster against K-State. They had just absolutely no answer for him. And Kansas went on the road, dominated the Wildcats without Darren Peterson. I'm starting to think the Darren Peterson stuff is no longer an issue. Like, if he plays, he plays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. This is a really good basketball team with him or without him because Melvin Council is Tyshawn Taylor 2.0. Kansas, dangerous, not quite dominant, but very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, get off the ledge. Kansas, I also have Kansas at number 5. I'm shocked that you have them at number 5, but I feel like the resume justifies it. Since starting 1-2 in conference play and trying to avoid going 1-3 for the first time in over 3 decades, all they've done now is rattle off 4 straight wins and looked really impressive in doing so. I still stand by that you can never judge a team based on their 4 best games and their 4 worst games. But, I think at some point, they're going to need Darren Peterson to be a consistent player for them down the stretch of these games. But you're right. I mean, Melvin Council, Flory Badunga have kind of helped, and Trey White especially have kind of helped Kansas and Kansas fans forget it in certain moments that they don't have Darren Peterson. I think they figured out more so how to play with or without each other in a way that's, that's probably big picture pretty good for them. But look, they're 3-5 right now in quad 1 games, but 7-0 in quad 2. And they've got many more opportunities to improve their quad 1 standing. And if they do, they'll be higher than a 4 seed. Kansas to me, number 5.
Number 4.
All right, number 4 is where I have the Iowa State Cyclones. And I almost put Kansas at number 4. I know they played head-to-head, but I think that our thoughts about Iowa State are a little bit muddied by their loss in Allen Fieldhouse. Like, Kansas would have beaten the Dream Team in Allen Fieldhouse on that night. That was just an absolute buzzsaw. Iowa State is still elite defensively. Sure, the offense can stall at times. I think that's the question for their ceiling. But they've got a triple-double machine in Joshua Jefferson. They've got a veteran point guard in Momcilovic. When he is on, Iowa State's unbeatable. So Iowa State, I still think, has a really high ceiling. They had a nice bounce-back win over the weekend at Oklahoma State where they just dominated a team that was backed into a corner and, frankly, has been a little bit disappointing in Big 12 play. I've got Iowa State number 4.
Yeah, and I mean, they're kind of like Kansas. I also have Iowa State at 4. I wonder if we're going to have the exact same rankings this week. Maybe we might have a difference of opinion at 2. We'll see. But 18-2, they had that 2-game slip against Kansas and Cincinnati. But those are still quad 1 and quad 2 losses. Iowa State has played 12 of their 20 games against the quad 1 or quad 2, at 10-2 in those 2. So I think from a resume standpoint, they check a lot of boxes. And you said it. I mean, Joshua Jefferson, I think the lineup with Torrey is one of the best in the Big 12. They're so good defensively, and when they're scoring at a high level, they're impossible to beat. And we haven't even mentioned Momcilovic, who's shooting like 60% from 3, which is just insane. Iowa State number 4 for me as well.
Number 3.
Yeah, this is where I've got Texas Tech. Texas Tech splitting with Houston I thought was huge. Out-rebounding them by 16 showed me that Texas Tech can be the more physical, dominant team on the glass, which is a huge question mark that I had for them because there's so much sizzle and finesse with Anderson and Toppin. Toppin making his free throws was another just little thing to keep an eye on because they're going to need that in the NCAA tournament. Texas Tech, to me, eye test-wise, since January 1st, Wise is a top 10 team in America. I believe a legitimate Final Four contender. I love this Texas Tech team, but I've got them number 3.
Yeah, they're playing as good a basketball as they've been playing all year right now in this stretch. And, hopefully they're getting healthier too, because that's a huge part of their, potential growth defensively. I also, no, I do not have Texas Tech at 3. I beg your pardon. This is where we disagree. I have Houston at 3. How can you put Texas Tech at 3 when Houston just lost to Texas Tech? I know they split. They did the home road split, but currently I've got Houston at number 3, 17-2, 5-1 in the Big 12. Obviously one of the top defenses in college basketball as they continue to look like one of the best, but certainly not against Texas Tech, who did a good job scoring against them. So I've got Houston at number 3.
Number 2.
Wow. Defending national champs, 19 straight on the road, and you lose a road game, and all of a sudden you drop to number 3.
Whoa. Okay, a couple of things. They were not the defending national champs. They lost.
Runner-ups, Ari, you know what I mean. They were the defending champs in my
straight
heart.
on the road. Okay, 16.
Oh, 16 straight. Excuse me. They didn't win the next 3. They only won 16 straight.
Only
on the
won
road.
16 straight on the road. I mean,
Boston, snowstorm, could barely get to the arena. Sold out crowd, college game day. They
I understand.
lose it.
Who won?
Whatevs. I've got Houston number 2. Still the league's toughest out in my eyes. Kingston Fleming's going for 42 points, albeit in a loss. The defense travels. Now, you got to be better on the glass. Can't let Texas Tech out-rebound you by 16, but if there's one guy that can dig into that, it's Kelvin Sampson. I bet they're not out-rebounded again all season long with JoJo Tugler and Sinak and the other guys on the front line. They're a beast. I've still got Houston at number 2.
Yeah, I actually kind of feel bad for them. I can't imagine what Kelvin Sampson has put them through.
Oh.
Getting
boot
out
camp. January boot camp.
Yeah, I've got Texas Tech at number 2. Texas Tech, 12 threes made against Houston, 17 threes made against Baylor, 11 against BYU, 13 against Utah, 11 against Colorado. That is 5 straight with double-digit threes made. And the one game they didn't, their last game against Houston, they hit 9. The previous one, Oklahoma State, 17. So they have gone one Big 12 game with hitting less than double digits threes. And in that one, their loss to Houston, they went 9 for 28. Clearly their worst shooting performance of the season, but shows you how good they are as a three-point shooting team. And this is not like they're hot or cold type situation. They can win even when they're shooting 30-some% from 3, even based on their high volume. Like the BYU win, where they only shot 38% from 3 on 11 of 29. They still won that one going away. They're the hottest team right now in the Big 12. They're playing as good a basketball as there is. And again, this is not a variance team. They could still win despite not shooting 40 or 50% from 3. They're a high volume 3-point shooting team. 2 is number 2 for me is Texas Tech.
Number 1.
Arizona, most complete team in America, not just the Big 12. Physical, veteran-led at the point with Jaden Bradley, built for March. They're my pick right now to win the national championship. Off to their best start since 2013, and they're only 2 games away from their best start in program history, and they've had a lot of bangers at Arizona. I've got Arizona number 1.
Yeah, I mean, this is an all-timer for a program that's had multiple national championships and, but has not won one in quite some time. I mean, 21-0 is 21-0, and they've beaten good teams. They've won all different kinds of ways. Good luck out rebounding them. Good luck getting them to not score in the paint. I mean, they're so good. They've got 1 through 5 can win inside on you because you're probably going to be outsized by them 1 through 5, and all the pieces fit. Like they've got. It feels like they've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of good things in terms of like big men. They can pass. They can rebound. Obviously, they've got point guards and 2 guards that will take you down low and score from the low block. They're a fun team to watch. Their style is really hard, seemingly impossible to stop. We talk about dictating the terms, and like 21 games, and nobody's been able to dictate the terms against Arizona. That obviously says a ton. Arizona, the unanimous number 1 team in college basketball, and the unanimous number 1 in our power ranking.
All right, guys. On to our next. So, we always power rank something random on Power Ranking Wednesday. And the thing that we are ranking today is Andre Iguodala's 42nd birthday. The Arizona alum is 42 years old today. So, we're going to go through the top 5 Andres. Let's do it.
Why would we power rank the top 5 Arizona basketball players of all time when we could just power rank the top 5 Andres of all time? Let's give it a whirl, James. Who you got?
All right, number 5 for me, I've got Andre Agassi. I guess the former world number 1 in men's tennis, winner of 8 Grand Slam titles, Olympic gold medalist, one of very few players to complete a career Grand Slam. So if you do that, you're a global superstar. You barely cracked my top 5 Andres, but Andre Agassi at number 5.
That's too low. That is far too low. For me, number 5 has got to be Andre the Bubbly. Who doesn't remember Andre Champagne? The first time you ever had champagne was a bottle of Andre Champagne, and it's the champagne of champagnes. Andre, number 5 for me.
Number 4.
All right, dude, I got to say, already your list is way better than mine. That's a banger. Number 4 for me, I went with all people, by the way. Number 4 for me is Andre Reed. Played 16 NFL seasons with the Bills, Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee in 2014. I've actually met him in person. He was co-owner of a startup that I was a part of several years ago and met him in San Diego. It's a long story. 7-time Pro Bowler. The guy's a nut, but super friendly. Real friendly guy, as long as he doesn't have to pay for anything. It was an all-expenses-paid trip by me. But Andre Reed is number 4 on my list.
Yeah, number 4 on my list is Andre Agassi, somebody you've obviously already mentioned. 8 Grand Slams, cultural icon of 90s sports. And when you think about the great American tennis players, he's on that list. And it's unfortunate because not too many good ones now, especially as we have the Australian Open. But yeah, Andre Agassi, number 4 for me.
Number 3.
All right, number 3 for me is Andre 3000. One half of, I knew you were going to say that, one half of Outkast, multiple Grammy Awards winner, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of Outkast in 2024. Cultural icon. Maybe we should power rank our top 5 Outkast songs later on in the show because that'd be a fun list to put together. Number 1 for me, Bombs Over Baghdad. Super underrated. Sleeper pick. Banger. Banger.
Number 3 for me, we're on 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who else you going to put here? Other than Andres Galarraga, the baseball player. Who can forget about Andres Galarraga? When I think 90s baseball, it's one of the first names I think of. Number 3 on my list.
That's a good one, R. Very underrated one. Number 2.
Number 2 for me is the guy that we're talking about because he was the ultimate glue guy, super underrated, Andre Iguodala. 19, like you don't play 19 seasons in the NBA if you're not just an absolute beast and dedicated to taking care of your health and your body. 4-time NBA champ, 2015 NBA Finals MVP, elite defender, but always thought he was really underrated in terms of his offensive game. And he's one of like the core memory Arizona basketball domination, early 2000s, Andre Iguodala, also an Olympic gold medalist in 2012.
Yeah, very underrated NBA player of all time. I agree with you there. Number 2 for me is Andre 3000. I mean, one of the most influential musical artists, half of Outkast, as you mentioned. And I mean, great voice, iconic voice, culturally relevant. I mean, actor, rapper, musician. Andre 3000. Number 2 for me.
Number 1.
All right, number 1 for me. This is why we had to power rank the top 5 Andres. Number 1 for me is Andre Coleman, who played wide receiver at Kansas State from 91 to 94, was one of the most dangerous return men, not just in K-State program history, but also in NFL history. He was only 5'9", drafted by the Chargers in the 3rd round of the 1995 NFL draft. Played 7 NFL seasons as a kick returner. That's basically all he did. Couldn't get on the field as a wide receiver, but he had a 98-yard kickoff return touchdown that opened the second half of Super Bowl 29. Steve Young got the MVP, but Andre Coleman kept the Chargers in the game, one of the great return men of all time, and he was a baller at K-State as a specialist, as a receiver, won K-State's first ever bowl game, went off against Wyoming in the Copper Bowl. Andre Coleman, number one on my list.
So you said that you kept him close with the 49ers in the Super Bowl? Is that what you said?
I don't remember the final score. I just remember there was a lot of excitement about the kickoff return touchdown.
It was like, I guess it was closer than I thought it was.
What was the final?
No, never mind. That's a different game. I'll have to look it up. Number one, I can't believe you did not have this guy on your list. You got to be crazy. I thought we were for sure going to have number one as the same. Andre the Giant, icon, mythical figure in human form, legend of wrestling and WWE, and of course, also a legend in the great movie The Princess Bride. James, I'm assuming you've never seen The Princess Bride.
Yeah, we've established that. That's been established.
Wow. Andre the Giant doesn't even make your list. I'm embarrassed for you.
Yeah, that Super Bowl didn't go well for the Chargers.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was it?
49-26. But you know who had a big game? Andre Coleman.
Yeah. Didn't even have Andre the Giant on your list. It's not even a real list without Andre the Giant. May he rest in peace.
But Andre Coleman was the offensive coordinator for Kansas State a couple of years under Bill Snyder towards the tail end of his career. Then he went on to be the wide receivers coach at Texas for the Longhorns, and now he's in the NFL. He's an offensive assistant for the Washington Commanders.
I would say the biggest miss for me was not having Andre Iguodala. The biggest miss for you was basically everyone on your list except for Andre Agassi.
Andre 3000?
Okay, fine. Him too. Yep.
Let's go.
But too low. Far too low for those Andres.
Yeah, Andre Coleman, though. We had to power rank. He was my favorite player growing up. Favorite player. Nostalgia. That's a nostalgia pick.
I love it.
All right, coming up next here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, we head into hour number 2. We're talking with Keenan Cummings, the managing editor for WVSports.com. What do the Mountaineers have to do to get on the right side of the NCAA tournament bubble? One step closer with a win over Kansas State last night in basketball. Then we'll also touch on some of their football movement this offseason. He's Ari. I'm James Taman on the controls with Anthony back at the Big 12 Studios headquarters. We are exclusively on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios.
Underway from the Huntsman Center. Missed the game in their previous road tilt and then returned just the other night. Brooke Walker with the first bucket of the game. Here comes L.A. Snead. A fade away from 10. Goes glass. Utah up by 3 at the end of 1. It ends a 3-minute scoring drought. He has 5 points. Harrison was open. Up top, Wheeler. A paint-to-paint pass inside, and it's Jordan Thomas with the lay-in. It's a 6-0 spurt for West Virginia. Utah has gone without points for 3.5 minutes until now. Maddie Wilkie circling back out. And eventually goes to Wilkie for 3, and in rhythm, Utah's three-point shooting has been tremendous. Left the layup short. Harrison pedal down, gets to the lane, and scores it. 1 minute left in this third. Snead crossing left, spinning right, scores it off the window. Utah by 11.
They can't catch you if you can score, so we'll just see if they're able to get anything to drop. There you
Reese
go.
Ross with a big 3 to put Utah back up by 9. Evans finds Ross, scores it, and Utah's back up by 15. White will hang on. It goes over to Snead. The clock is going to run out, and what a response. The Utah Utes bounce back.
on TuneIn. Our first guest today is Keenan Cummings, the managing editor for WVSports.com, writes for West Virginia's On3 affiliate here on the program. As West Virginia, Ross Hodge stays perfect at home in Morgantown. West Virginia takes down Kansas State last night on the hardwood. And this was a back-and-forth game for the most part, Keenan. West Virginia had a scoring stretch, or lack of scoring, I should say. They went scoreless for about 7 minutes in the second half. They were actually down by 4 with 3.5 to play, but somehow got the win over the Wildcats to remain undefeated at WVU Coliseum. What was the number one headline in your eyes from last night's matchup?
I think it's West Virginia's to the point of the season where if they tried to do this earlier in the year, if you go, how many times in a game do you start 2 for 13 and then go 7 minutes without scoring and still find a way to win? And I think that was kind of what Ross Hodge hit on at the end of the game. They've had some wins on their resume that might be better, might be more important, but this was probably his favorite because of what his team was able to overcome and kind of what they were able to do and find a way to gut out this win. And he kind of the number one player that kind of perfectly encapsulates that is, Trayson Eaglestaff. At times he's struggled this year, has really played a lot better of late. But in this game, he struggled for a large period of this game, and West Virginia kind of relied on him down the stretch. He had 8 points, over the final 3-some minutes and finished with 12. And it's kind of a testament to what Ross Hodge wants to see out of his basketball team. Keep fighting, keep gutting it out. And even when you don't have your best stuff, find a way to win basketball games.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and a great example, and especially in this conference where you've got desperate teams. K-State's certainly in that category. I mean, what do you think the path is for this team to be a tournament team?
Well, they got some work to do right now. I think, obviously everyone would like to go back and change some things. West Virginia, they're probably in a much different spot had they just been able to close those Clemson and Ohio State games earlier in the year, winning both of those. But that's kind of the gift and the curse, I guess, if you want to look at it, when playing in a league like the Big 12. There's so many opportunities. Ross Hodge has talked about it. He doesn't like big picture stuff with his team. He tries to avoid it, but that is something he has talked about, that in this league, you're going to have opportunities. And West Virginia understands that. You got to win at home. That hasn't been a problem for this team throughout the year. They're 13-0 at home, but they've got to win at home, and they've got to find a way to steal some on the road, moving here down the stretch. They have 14 wins now and 10 left in the regular season. One, obviously, you're guaranteed one in the tournament. You got to try to get to that 20 number at least because of what you kind of weren't able to do in the non-conference. And that isn't completely unheard of. Obviously you got to win these games, especially one coming up against a Baylor team that kind of has been inconsistent as well.
Yeah, those two games you noted in the non-conference, West Virginia lost those by a combined 4 points, Clemson and Ohio State, and they're 5-2 in their last 7 games. The other thing I like about West Virginia is their schedule. They only play Houston once. They only play Arizona once. They only play Texas Tech once, Kansas once. When you look at the teams that they're getting twice, they're teams that are towards the bottom of the league. So I think their schedule shapes up really nice. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I thought that even before the season that, obviously no one wants to go on the road 3 of their first 4 road games and play the top of the league with that, which they had to do. But there's a trade-off with that. You were able to get Kansas at home. You're able to get Texas Tech at home. You're able to get some of these teams at home, and you don't have to play them once. And in a league like this, where there's just such a slim margin of error, finding a way to stack wins is so critical because at the end of the year, you look up and down the list in this league, if West Virginia has 6 quadrant 1 opportunities available still on the schedule, and that's not the case in every league. If West Virginia wins 4 of those, they're in a much different spot. I think I looked this morning or last night, it was 67th in the net right now, which obviously isn't ideal, but you win a few more games, stack some things together, this starts to become a much more interesting profile because I feel like with West Virginia starting the non-conference, not as much people nationally are kind of talking about them as much because, they are 14-7 right now, and 3 of their losses in Big 12 play, all 3 are to Iowa State, Houston, and Arizona on the road. And I don't know many teams that are going to go on the road and beat those 3 teams.
Yeah, and to your point, like there's no bad losses there. All of their 7 losses are, reputable. There's no horrible quad 3 losses there. Clemson, Xavier, Wake Forest, Ohio State, Iowa State, Houston, and Arizona. To your point, what do they need to do to play up? Because to your point earlier, like they're not going to be a tournament team if they can't get wins against some of the top teams in this conference. Texas Tech is coming up, BYU later on. Like they've proven they can beat middle to bottom tier of the Big 12. How do they punch up?
Well, I think West Virginia's been pretty effective defensively this year. I think that that's something that Ross Hodge has really asked and kind of trying to draw out of his team. And for the most part, you've seen it. They've been good there. I think offensively on the other end, that's where they need to get a little bit better. Obviously they want to play efficient basketball. They want to play something that mirrors what they do defensively. But at times I feel like it's Honor Huff needs to score the ball, or they go through some struggles where they can't put the ball in the hole. And, I think that's why it was so encouraging last night to see some other guys step up. You did get the effort from Trayson Eaglestaff at the end. They don't win that game without him at the end. In the first half, Chance Moore, Brendan Laureate, who's been very, very good of late, played 5 minutes in the first half, and Chance Moore carried them. I think he was plus 16 in the first half and really kept them in the game. So I think you need those other guys to emerge and other guys to be able to give you that consistent scoring effort. And this goes back really, guys, since some of the first parts of the season. Ross Hodge has been saying this, and it's gotten better at times, but consistency is key. And if you get that to kind of go with what they're doing defensively, you're going to give yourself a chance.
Keenan Cummings is with us, writes for WVSports.com, managing editor, as West Virginia takes down Kansas State last night, 59-54, to get to 5-3 in Big 12 play. So when you talk about the offensive consistency or lack thereof, is that turning the ball over? Is it shooting? Like last night, I know West Virginia only hit 7 threes and shot 29% from 3, but then they've had some games where they've just been lights out. Is this a good shooting team? What would you point to offensively that has to be more consistent?
Really, I think it's kind of a combination of all of it. Last night, the turnovers really that was pretty much their undoing almost. They really struggled to kind of just do some basic things, which hasn't necessarily been the case all year. Honor Huff, I don't want to say he's in a slump. He hit 5 threes last night, scored 17 points. But the last couple games, it's been harder for him with the attention he's getting from defenses. And something that Ross had talked about heading into this game is, I just want him to, make the simple plays. Don't press, get your teammates involved. And I think he's done a better job of that of late, kind of being that even not necessarily a guy that's going to get the assist, but the guy that's going to pass it to a guy that could pass it to another guy to get an assist. I call it a hockey style assist. So I think that he's drawing attention. And, last night you look at his line, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He did what he needs to do, and he needs that help around him. And I think if you continue to get that, and really when the thing with West Virginia that's interesting to me is at times they struggle to score in the post. And if they could get a more consistent presence there, that's where Chance Moore comes in, Brendan Laureate comes in. I think that would help a lot too. You got to be able to put some pressure there on top of kind of all the attention that obviously Honor Huff is going to draw.
I'm curious from a football perspective, Keenan, while we have you, we have been making our way through each team in the Big 12. Obviously we featured you in our discussions around West Virginia. Just kind of give us your thoughts overall, big picture on West Virginia football and where they are headed into Rich Rod year 2. And what are the reasonable expectations for this program heading into year 2 for Rich Rod?
Well, I think since last time we've talked, I think that they've done a better job even addressing some more of the needs that they needed in the transfer portal. I think they've added, 8 some guys during that span. So they're up to 34 transfers now, 80 some new players. I think it's 81 or 82 at my last check. And it's going to be, obviously a lot of new faces. But I think the thing that they've done well this offseason is get guys that really, quite honestly, are at a higher level. On paper doesn't matter really when the games are played, but I do think it matters when putting a roster together. And I think that they've done a better job getting guys that are going to be there for multiple years. In terms of expectations, I think that fans expect a step forward. Putting a number to it, West Virginia got 4 wins last year. If you can take that to 8 and then have a lot of your roster returning, which wasn't the case, coming into this year, whether West Virginia did well or not, they were going to have massive roster turnover. Next year, that won't necessarily be as bad. They're bringing in a lot of guys with multiple years of eligibility, a lot of high school kids, a lot of junior college kids. So if you can continue to build this thing over the long term and show some real progress on the field, I think even you get to 7 and you look good doing it, then I think fans are going to be pretty excited about year 3. And I think that if you're being honest, if you ask West Virginia's coaches, I think obviously they want to win now, but year 3 is I think that's the year that people are expecting West Virginia to take a massive leap.
Keenan, if you were to give Rich Rod a letter grade for year 1 and halfway through the offseason for year 2, what would it be?
I think it's hard to just say, hey, you were 4-8. It's not a good season. I think everybody knows that. But he was dealt a tough hand. They had so much turnover and so many things went wrong that were really out of West Virginia's control last year. They dealt with a ton of injuries. They played 5 different quarterbacks, and some of that was not, hey, let's play a different guy. Some of it was completely out of necessity. Lost all their skill players, really a lot of them that were returning. Their offensive line was entirely new. So I think just getting to 4 wins, as crazy as it sounds, with what he had to deal with is an encouraging sign, because they were there in a couple other ones. 6 was in the realm of possibility for West Virginia last year if they can find a way to close, at Arizona State and then maybe another game on the schedule. So I think that he was dealt a tough hand, but I'm encouraged from what I've seen this offseason, from what the kind of the plan that they've had and putting it into motion. Now it's about obviously turning that into wins, turning that into success. I think a solid C right now. It's hard to go B when you win 4 games, and obviously, but what they've been able to do with the recruiting class, bring in a kind of top 20 class, which isn't common at West Virginia from the high school, junior college level, and then bring in 34 transfers that had a lot of Power 4 attention, a lot of guys that you hear those top of the line schools involved with. It gives you a lot of optimism for the future.
They have a top 20 high school class?
Yes. It's 21 right now. It was 20. It's 21 according to Rivals rankings.
Wow, that's impressive. Keenan Cummings, managing editor for WVSports.com. Appreciate your time, Keenan. Good stuff, and we'll talk again.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, man. See ya. Keenan Cummings, WVSports.com. Writes for West Virginia's On 3 affiliate, Heisman Trophy voter, top 25 recruiting class for West Virginia. We have worked through their portal class, and speaking of transfer portal, part of our transfer portal series continues with Arizona State coming up next. They've got a top 3 class in the Big 12. We'll break it down. He's Ari, I'm James. This is Big 12 Radio, powered by Modelo, exclusively on TuneIn.
This is Kira Merchant. About half this roster, including Merchant, with Houston ties, understandably. As Amir Abdur-Rahim, the former Texas A&M Aggie. And going over there, tested early. Able to fend off Kendall Hunter, trying to get into the paint. Off balance, shot will fall. As Kira Merchant comes away with the 2. Figueroa. Little side step, fires one up, drops it in. 3-pointer for Peguero. 4.5 to go here in the third quarter. A quarter in which both teams have put up 9 points, as Baylor's still hanging on to that 17-point margin they had at halftime. Hunter banks one in.
I'm not sure she planned to bank it in, but 3 points is 3 points.
Kendall Hunter straddling that rivalry between Texas and A&M. Spent 2 years as a Longhorn, 2 years as an Aggie, and now with the Cougs. Yeah, they hit 65 and lost at K-State in their last outing. Otherwise have not reached that mark in conference play. And struggled in non-con as well. For the best record in Big 12 play with TCU, they will remain atop the Big 12 conference, improving to 8-1. The hottest team, the green and gold in all of Big 12 country. 8 straight wins for Nicky Collin and company. It's Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Chris Karpman, the owner-publisher of Sun Devil Source for 24/7 Sports, will be joining the show here in about 15 minutes. And then in hour number 3, really excited for Matt Babcock, the NBA draft analyst for Babcock Hoops. His website, babcockhoops.com, is fantastic. Like in-depth scouting reports, the top 3 guys from the Big 12 that they've done recently with Peterson and DeBonsa and Kingston Flemings. They did a deep dive on JoJo Tugler and what his NBA potential might be. So we'll chat with Matt a little bit later on. But part of our daily transfer portal tracker series takes us out to Tempe and Arizona State, who has a top 3 transfer class in the Big 12, according to 24/7 Sports Composite. Ari, who are the big names when you look at Arizona State and what they've done? They've had some key departures, but they've brought in some horses.
Yeah, and you know, we'll start with a familiar name in the Big 12. Omarion Miller, the wide receiver from Colorado, steps over after 27 games played and 3 seasons at Colorado, including 11 in 2025 with a significant role. I mean, this is a guy that Colorado expected to take a huge jump, you know, after Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and Obviously, he did as much as he possibly could because the passing game wasn't great, but 45 catches for 808, second team All Big 12. I mean, when you think about that, considering the passing offense or lack thereof for Colorado, it's a huge get. I also love the center that they added, Tana Alo Tupuala, the center from Georgia Tech, who was the starting center last year, one of the best teams in the ACC, a team that trucked Colorado early, starting with their run game. So when you think about how physical that Georgia Tech run game was, now Arizona State adds their starting center from last year. They also added another experienced wide receiver in Reed Harris from Boston College, who, wasn't the top receiver for BC, but remember that this was not a great BC team, and he played about 70 offensive snaps last year. So then the big ones, Cutter Boley, the quarterback from Kentucky, who was primarily the starter at Kentucky last year. And his numbers aren't incredible, but you got to think, based on the success that Dillingham's had with quarterbacks, that Boley is next in the line of really productive quarterbacks. Boley is a top arm talent. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, so he's a load. 2,100 yards passing last year, 15 touchdowns, 12 picks, and then rushed for 85 yards and 2 scores. So, kind of in the mold of a Sam Levitt, probably a little bit of a bigger body, but less of a finished product. But a ton there to like about Cutter Boley and what will be around him on offense with the additions of Reed Harris, Omarion Miller, and the center from Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they didn't bring in any huge splash type guys, like elite NFL prospects, but I still think it can be a net positive, their class. We look at Sam Levitt departing for LSU. Raheem Brown will be the starting running back at Texas next year. You lose Jordan Tyson to the NFL, but Cutter Boley feels like a Dillingham guy. And to your point, he will get the most out of that position in terms of consistency. Look at what he did with Jeff Sims this past year. And Cutter Boley at Kentucky really blew up last year when he threw for 330 yards and 5 touchdowns, which was a Kentucky passing record he was a freshman at the time. But I love his size. Pro Football Focus grades him out really high against really elite defenses. And to your point, he played on a really bad Kentucky team. So I think collectively, they also brought in Mikey Keene, who's a well-traveled, a veteran backup quarterback, was at Fresno State and Michigan. And then Reed Harris, the receiver that you mentioned from Boston College. His numbers aren't eye-popping, but everybody lists him as a top 20 portal player, any position, and NFL scouts are obsessed with this guy. He's 6'5", 217 pounds. He's got great speed for his size, very much kind of the mold of Jordan Tyson. And then with Omarion Miller, that's a vertical threat and a kind of gadget guy for Arizona State. So I think, I first look at the skill positions because of the big names that are departing, and I think they filled those needs at a really high level for what Dillingham has been very transparent about that he has in his pocket in terms of NIL.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite transfer portal hauls, in the Big 12 that we've done so far, because I think this is a balance of big school guys and small school guys that have produced, right? I mean, they're adding a starting center from Georgia Tech, a starting wide receiver from Colorado. We haven't even touched on the defensive side of the football, but Lyric Rawls was arguably the best defensive player for Kansas this past year, certainly in the secondary. He's brought over now. Lyric Rawls is a big-time playmaking safety for Kansas. So they balance that with, some smaller school guys. Dave Avett, they brought in this running back from Villanova, the Division II level, who basically in 2 seasons has averaged over 5 yards a carry on basically 300 carries. 300 carries in 2 seasons. He's averaging 5 yards a carry. And then there's Marquise Gillis, the Delaware State running back. They brought in these 2 guys in Avett and Gillis are basically carbon copies of one another, both 6 feet, 210 pounds. Gillis went 184 carries for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, an average of 6 yards per carry. So big-time yards per carry backs this year to be bell cow backs for Arizona State with Raleek Brown and the running back room decimated. Kanye Udo also transferring out. So love that. And then, I mean, arguably the best player they added in the portal was Jalen Thompson, the edge rusher former four-star recruit who transferred from Michigan State. He was one of the top edge rushers available in the portal and picked Arizona State over Notre Dame and Indiana. So that's a pretty good list of teams that were interested in him. He had 2.5 sacks, 30 tackles, and 8 quarterback hurries in 2025. Just 10 games played as a junior for Michigan State last year.
Yeah, really nice class. I would say on both sides of the ball. Rawls was a big addition. Only spent 1 year with Kansas. Before that, he was at Florida International, where he was one of the best defensive backs at the Group of 5 level. And then I love Owen Long, the linebacker. When you look at Arizona State and their linebacker production, they always kind of have those like plug-and-play linebacker safety hybrid type guys. And this guy looks like he's got some Jacob Rodriguez to him, where he is just a tackling machine. He had the nation's most tackles last year, led all of FBS with 151 tackles at Colorado State. He was the third highest rated player in the portal that signed with Arizona State, according to all the recruiting services, behind Omarion Miller and the quarterback. So the more I deep dive their class, I see guys that, to your point you brought up earlier, guys that were productive, not just at the Group of 5 level, but like they found some guys that were productive players at the power conference level, albeit on really bad teams like Boston College and Kentucky and Colorado and even Kansas in the season that they just had. But these guys are dudes.
And, the one thing that just continues to stand out about Kenny Dillingham and the program that he's built at Arizona State is just how competitive they are in the Texas to Tempe category. A lot of guys have added in the portal are Texas guys. There's specific schools they've got ties to that are powerhouse programs in the state of Texas, including, Houston's North Shore. And I think their incoming freshman class speaks to this too, because they added 3 4-stars from the state of Texas, including Jake Fetty from El Paso, quarterback, 4-star signee. So when you think about the quarterback room, they've got, the experienced guy coming in who's the presumptive starter. They have an experienced player, Mikey Keene, that's played a lot for Fresno State, didn't play a ton for Michigan, but he's kind of the backup role that we've seen Arizona State have to utilize. And then they have the freshman, Jake Fetty, who they can develop as a 4-star from Del Valle High School in El Paso. They also added Carday Mack from Humble, Texas. That's right, James, Humble, not humble, but it's Humble, running back, 4-star running back. And then Julian Hugo from Steele High School in Cibolo in the San Antonio area, 4-star defensive end. So Texas to Tempe, big time part of the plan for Kenny Dillingham, and he continues to rake in the state of Texas.
Man, they're going to be a team that it'll be interesting to see where they're ranked or if they're ranked in the preseason, because they won 8 regular season games, lost their bowl game in overtime to Duke, so they finished 8-5. And I think everybody's going to look at, they don't have Sam Levitt. Well, they didn't have Sam Levitt almost all of last season and still went 8-4. And Jeff Sims is graduated, and Raleek Brown, I should say, off to Texas and Tyson the NFL. Like I think people are going to be sleeping on Arizona State for this upcoming season. In terms of their secondary, you brought up Rawls and all the guys they brought in there. So in the secondary, they took the path of high-level speed, NFL prototypical cornerback size that maybe didn't have the snaps at an LSU with Ashton Stamps, at an Arkansas, at a Penn State. They bring in a safety, Antoine Belgrave Shorter, who has an NFL body. They bring in Caleb Chester, who's a transfer from Texas, one of those Texas to Tempe guys. But in the secondary, Chase Rucker, a transfer from Michigan State. Nigel Pringles, the kid from Arkansas, who was like their number 1 recruit out of high school a couple of years ago. They also added a couple of tight ends. We know that position's really important for Arizona State and what they want to do schematically. They bring in 2 monster tight ends, one who is productive at the FCS level and was an All-American, the other that's from a bigger school where he wasn't on the field as much. Just really good balance in their class. Like top to bottom, they bring in guys that on paper look like they could be plug-and-play starters right away across the board at multiple positions.
Yeah, so, do we think – so over under 8 wins for Arizona State next year?
Right now, I'd probably say a push. Not having their schedule in front of me, I don't think they'll be worse than they were last year.
Right.
I mean, losing Sam Levitt early in the year, Jordan Tyson wasn't 100% healthy really at any point throughout the season, and you still pick up a win against Texas Tech. You still figure out a way to claw your way to 8 wins, and then take the ACC champ or runner-up, I should say, down to the wire in your bowl game. Yeah, I think I'd go push or above.
Arizona State does have a difficult schedule. They play at A&M in the non-conference. There are 3 non-conference games: Morgan State, A&M, and Hawaii. But at A&M is obviously a tough one. They have to go to Wembley in London week 3 to play Kansas. And then you think about 2 of the presumptive favorites in the Big 12, Texas Tech and BYU. They both play at Texas Tech and BYU. So, not the easiest schedule, but I think this team will be considerably better this upcoming year than it was last year. In fact, I'll be very curious to see what Boley's numbers look like relative to Sam Levitt, because I think when you look at some of the guys they've brought in and top end players like the Georgia Tech offense, the Georgia Tech center, or Lyric Rawls or Cutter Bowl, I think it was pretty obvious that Arizona State was in a situation to where it's either you add Sam, you keep Sam Levitt, but you don't add half the guys they added in the portal, or you can add the majority of the guys they added in the portal, where they had a Boley, who I, again, don't think there'll be much of a drop-off with from Levitt, plus Omarion Miller, Lyric Rawls, the center they brought in as a starter from Georgia Tech. So I think, it's either one guy or 4 or 5 guys, and I think they made the right decision there, because I bet you'll look at those numbers next year, and that Boley will have as good a numbers as Sam Levitt does this year.
Agreed. And the non-conference for the Big 12 is going to be massive. The Big 12 saw an uptick last year in the non-conference from what we did the season before. When I look at TCU in North Carolina overseas in Ireland to open the season, when I look at Notre Dame and BYU week 7, it's going to be a game that doesn't feel like a non-conference game because it's going to be so late in the calendar. But then Arizona State at Texas A&M might be the most highly anticipated non-conference game for me, because it's at Texas A&M. It's not on a neutral field. It's at Kyle Field in College Station, and with the Texas to Tempe connection, that is a game that is going to be so important to all of those Arizona State guys from Texas, with Texas A&M's pedigree and where they're going to be ranked in the preseason. That's a can't hurt you type game for Arizona State. I cannot wait for that one. All right, coming up next here on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, we've got Chris Karpman, the owner-publisher of SunDevilSource.com for 24/7 Sports. He'll join us around the corner to chat about Arizona State's transfer portal offseason. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Here are the top plays from this week's Player of the Week.
Shoot, top and down low. Couple of thunderous dribbles. Contact, a whistle, +1. Less than 3 to play in this first half. Toppin against Carr, one-on-one. Turns him around and throws it in. 6 minutes into this second half. Toppin in the lane. That's money for JT Toppin when he gets in that deep. He's got 11 points in 15 minutes tonight. Toppin banging with Ratai with the left, in, and 1.
This is where you make your push.
It's Toppin time underneath. That time he gets the roll.
Jalen Petty, the freshman who moved into the starting lineup 8 games ago. He had 20 in the game against the Cougars. The left-handed reverse for the left-hander in JT Toppin.
Well, both these teams are so good. If they can't grab it, they will tip it to a teammate, especially back tips on offensive rebound.
Anderson, no. Toppin, yes!
With the right hand, you talk about relentless. You look it up in the dictionary, and JT Toppin's picture.
Anderson, one of 3 Red Raiders who has not come off the floor yet in this game. Toppin, another one, and he'll score with the right to extend the lead. He is a star. 19 points, 4 assists already in the game for Flemings. Toppin gets free and one. Ball out on the perimeter for the entirety of this possession. Now Anderson gets into the paint. What a pass to Toppin. Anderson finds Toppin. Too strong. Got it back. Up again. Got it.
Big 12 today, here on Big 12 Radio, powered by Modelo, heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We welcome in Chris Karpman, owner-publisher of SunDevilSource.com for 24/7 Sports, the number one spot for Arizona State athletics. Heisman voter. He joins us here on the show to break down Arizona State's offseason, part of our Transfer Portal Tracker series. Chris, good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
Man, we're good. Nice win for Arizona State the other day on the hardwood. But when it comes to football, so would you say this offseason and the transfer portal has been a net positive or a net negative for Arizona State? I think on the surface, everybody sees the guys leaving, but we look at this class of guys coming in and think that they have filled a lot of spots.
Yeah, I think it's to be determined just because of the importance of the quarterback position in football, right? Rankings wise, ASU is 15th and third in the Big 12. It's actually quite impressive what they've done at a lot of positions, wide receiver most prominently. Kenny Dillingham made a calculated decision. Okay, we're not going to spend nearly as much money at quarterback, bringing in Cutter Boley and Mike Keene, but we're going to really go out there and nab one of the best wide receiver duos in the country. Omarion Miller and Reed Harris, those guys are NFL prospects, day one, day two type guys. So we're going to find out if that calculation was savvy or not. Of course, you could spend more money at quarterback, but then you're going to have to pull back at some other spots. And we're now in an era where we're starting to evaluate coaches and for some of these decisions.
Yeah, and I know one of the conversations around Levitt was like if they signed Levitt for whatever it was, $7 million, that would sort of hamper their ability to expand and sign players outside of that. Is that kind of what we're seeing now? They add the Georgia Tech center, they add Boley, they add Omarion Miller and Lyric Rawls, like some big time players that have produced, at the Power 4 level already. Is that sort of the math equation, Chris? Was that the trade off there?
Yeah. Bottom line is Sam Levitt costs $2 to $3 million more than Cutter Boley, and if you're not the Texas Techs of the world where it doesn't really matter and you can just sign everybody that you want pretty much, you got to make some of these decisions working within the constraints of revenue share and NIL, whatever NIL support that you have available. Sam Levitt would have taken probably not just the money that had to be spent on him, but then you got to still spend all the money on the rest of the offensive pieces, the protection and the wide receiver talent to have him feeling good. But then you have to take away from some of what you did defensively probably too, where ASU added Owen Long, the number one tackler in the country in FBS last year at Colorado State. He had 151 tackles as a linebacker. ASU's replacing Keyshawn Elliott and Jordan Crook. That's a big deal. Then they went out and they got 2 starting defensive ends from the Power 4 level. From Baylor, Amarion Winston, and then Jalen Thompson from Michigan State. They went out and got 2 corners who have started at the Power 4 level pretty extensively between in LSU and Michigan State. DBs, Ashton Stamps at LSU didn't start this past year, but he started the 2 prior seasons. They got a corner from Michigan State who's started 9 games, I believe, so far. So I think ASU felt like didn't want to have big glaring gaps in spots on their roster. And the only way to really not have that is to be more reasonable in terms of the spending at the quarterback position, I think.
Chris, with the receiver position and Reed Harris, like his numbers aren't eye-popping, the transfer receiver from Boston College, but he's a top 20 portal guy across the board. What is his comp? I think he's 6'5", 215 pounds. What does he bring to that Arizona State offense?
Yeah, he's a hybrid player that you can bring into the slot and be a mismatch, extremely imposing red zone weapon because of his length, his catch radius, his ability to go up and high point the ball. I actually think that he's somewhat like N'Keal Harry in terms of the size, physicality, the ability to make contested catches, to be a third down target. But he might even have this sounds crazy, but he might even have a better catch radius and ability to go get the ball in traffic. This is a legitimate first or second round type of a prospect if everything comes together for him. And it's crazy to say that about somebody who would be perceived as the number 2 wide receiver that ASU's brought in behind Omarion Miller, who is every bit of a first round NFL draft prospect. You put those 2 guys together and you got to go back to when N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk were playing together at ASU to get a combination. And honestly, these guys are maybe even a little bit more seasoned than where Brandon Ayuk was at that particular time. And so I think that the calculation is that those guys are going to get open against man coverage, and you need that with a quarterback who's not quite as developed or as experienced. And if you play zone, you have the ability to really take advantage with the potency that you have with some other options that you can pair with those guys.
Talking with Chris Karpman here from Sun Devil Source. Chris, over under 8 wins for Arizona State in 2026.
Yeah, I think that's the mark right now. I would say under right now, just because I have to see these pieces assembled and what that looks like in spring ball. I may have a very different answer for you on this because it's a very early sort of a snapshot, right? But right now, I'd say probably a 7-5 season is the most likely. 7.5 to 8 is where I'd probably put the over under. But I think, given how much ASU lost with 2/3 of its starters departing, Sam Levitt transferring, Raleek Brown, Javen Robinson, Josh Atkins also transferring, those are the real transfer losses. I feel better about the situation than I had anticipated feeling going into the portal period, just because I didn't know if ASU would be able to do this well at this many positions across the board.
What did Arizona State do to keep Kenny Dillingham?
So there's a few things that were really important to Kenny Dillingham in those conversations. The first is he wanted to make sure that he had university support baked in. And the way that that was accomplished was he was able to get a rollover anytime that he wins 3 games in a season in the 5-year deal. There's a contractual limiting thing in Arizona state law that only allows coaches to have 5-year contracts. And elsewhere, there's a lot of 7 and 8-year contracts. And so the ability to get this automatic rollover for every season with 3 or more wins within that 5-year period expands his contract effectively to as much as a decade. And what that does is it basically, to use a poker term, it kind of pot commits ASU to push NIL, to get Michael Crow, the university president, to encourage benefactors of the university, people who haven't necessarily always supported NIL, to contribute there as well. And that was a factor in what helped ASU accomplish this in the transfer portal. This was a much better result than in the couple of years prior. So I think that was certainly number one. The second thing that was really big that he talked about a lot was to increase the staffing pool for his staff. Needed to be able to retain coaches. They were able to do that across the board to this point, while also spending more money on Joshua Mora, who is now effectively their general manager. He's their executive director of player personnel, and other people within the operation, because you need those people to help you be ready for the transfer portal every single year. Because remember, all the evaluations are taking place while the season is kind of ongoing. So those are the two main things. There were some other like ancillary things I think that were also meaningful, but he really pushed ASU's administration to be super invested in football via this creative approach that he and his agent took with Graham Rossini, ASU's athletic director.
Really great insight there, Chris. Yeah, I'm curious, how much engagement have they seen already? I did see there was like a Phoenix moving company that's, been promoting that they've moved some of these transfer players in, and I'm assuming there's some NIL dollars associated with that. Like, how we know Kenny's been very outward and outspoken about engaging the Phoenix and greater area business community. How has that gone so far?
Yeah, I think ASU probably doubled its NIL resources this year. Like, this is a team that accomplished a tremendous amount 2 years ago when it won the Big 12 championship, because not just what people saw on the field, but that was a $4 million, maybe a little bit more roster spend in NIL compared to $20 million at the Texases, Ohio States, Oregons of the world. They were operating at literally a 5 or 6 to 1 disadvantage financially 2 years ago. Last year, revenue share kicks in. All these schools are spending $13 to $15 million in football in rev share, but then ASU's NIL piece was basically the same. It didn't grow that much. So that's another $4 million, maybe $5 million on the roster. Adidas helped out with a 6-figure kick for Jordan Tyson, which you could do for players. But still, at other schools, that was a $15 or $20 million number. So ASU was still at a disadvantage, but instead of a 4 to 5 to 1, it was maybe like a 2 to 1, or maybe a little bit less than a 2 to 1. The getting, what I have heard is around a doubling maybe of the NIL to around an 8 million, 9 million, maybe as high as 10 million. Okay, now that gets you at least another 6, 8 to 10, maybe starter caliber players that you wouldn't have had in prior years. And that really, the impetus for that was Michael Crow pushing people who aren't going to really put their names out there in terms of their business ownership support for NIL or whatever, but they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes.
So you said they were basically being outbid 5-1 2 years ago, and I look at their portal class from 2 years ago, and they brought in Raleek Brown and Sam Levitt and Miles Rouser and Jeff Sims, like a lot of guys that were Jordan Clark. Beg your pardon, not Clark. I'm thinking of the linebacker
Jordan
Keyshawn
Clark.
Elliott. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Like they brought in a lot of guys that played a lot of snaps the last 2 years with basically no money.
Well, see, so here's the thing, James. If you want to do like a really cool comparison, most of those guys that you named had never started at the Power 4 level, and a lot of them had never even played, and the others were starters at Group of 6 schools or even FCS schools in the form of like Cam Scadaboo or Shamari Simmons the year prior. And so what you're seeing now that illustrates the difference in what they were able to accomplish is the vast majority of their transfer portal players now, they either were starting Power 4 players or part-time starters who did a very good job, or they were star players at the Group of 6 level or lower. And then they added on top of that some junior college players that were super high profile. Like they added the #1 overall junior college player in the country, Jermaine Mitchell, as a left tackle option, who looks like to me an NFL offensive tackle prospect. So you can just see that there's a slightly higher caliber of athleticism and demonstrated production at higher levels than what they had a couple of years ago when they did a great job in the 2 to 3. The first year or two of Dillingham was very much where they had to win on evaluations over everybody else. Now they are still doing a good job, I think, with their evaluations, but they have a lot more behind it to help be able to bring in some of those players.
What has impressed you the most about Kenny Dillingham?
I would say the culture that he's able to foster. You have a coach who has this, in my experience at ASU, going back the last maybe 6 coaches, you have a much better ability to relate and connect to players while still pushing them hard and motivating their success. You're in this era now where these guys are almost like they're like pseudo employees because they're being paid a good amount of money, but they're not really employees and they're still college students, and the time demands are great, but you need to be able to extract a tremendous amount from them. And the way that you do that is you get them to understand that this is also in their best interest, and it maximizes their ability to monetize themselves. So they have this slogan, which you guys have probably heard, which is, we're going to have more fun working harder than anybody in the country. And they really, that's like at the forefront of everything that they do, is they have all these light, cool moments where they're like playing dodgeball up at Camp Tonazona after a practice, or they bring a basketball hoop into their meeting room and they have like some sort of a competition in basketball, and they play video games and they have a golf simulator. They do all these things that are fun and cool, but they're also competitive, and they elevate the atmosphere in a way that then allows people to feel good about all the actual hard work that they have to do to be productive and successful.
Man, that's awesome. Sounds like a Google compound up there in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Chris, great stuff, man. Appreciate your time. A lot of exciting things when it comes to Arizona State football. We appreciate your insight.
My pleasure, guys.
Chris Karpman, owner-publisher of SunDevilSource.com for 24/7 Sports, joining us here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. And that wraps our Transfer Portal Tracker series on Arizona State. If you want to go back and hear more from Chris or any of our other guests, Big 12 Radio, we podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and TuneIn On Demand. We'll take a break. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. Coming up next, we've got Evan Miyakawa's latest lineup data, and we'll preview a couple of Big 12 men's basketball games tonight with TCU in Houston and Baylor Cincinnati. He's Ari, I'm James. This is Big 12 Radio. Here are the top plays from this week's Newcomer of the Week.
He knows this rivalry well as anybody. Dibanza between the legs, a little spin spikel and pivot. Utes have missed their first 5 shots. Brown steps through and it's blocked by Dibanza. The outlet. Davis with the kick out to right for 3.
When he's involved offensively, you guys go from good to almost unbeatable. He agrees. In their only 2 losses, Keba has not been involved.
Dibanza steps through and finishes.
Different Keanu Dawes early in this one. I think we had a nice pep talk from Alex Jensen.
A lot of whistles, and this time it falls.
To me, he's a step too far removed from the shooters.
Now Dibanza, it looked like pretty good defense from Okonkwo. What can he do? They switch. Dibanza shoves, no whistle, and a finger roll in, and he is fired up. Early moments of the second half. Short. Dibanza, head of steam. Dibanza, Euros his way. Count it. McHenry. The kick out to Dawes. He can't hold on to it, and it's turned over. Saunders. Earthquake! Dibanza. No, never hit iron. 4 on the shot clock. Loose ball. They got to put it up. Oh, and they do! It's a 2-hand stuff.
As a program and as a university does not do any on-court activities on Sunday because of their faith. That means that the Arizona's coming into town. Oh.
It's AJ Mania! It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Heard exclusively on TuneIn, powered by Modelo. Modelo fan rule number 39. If you say we when referring to your team, Modelo backs you up. So when we're talking about the Big 12, Ari, and you say we, I've got your back, Modelo has your back.
That's good to know. And important, too, because, look, don't ever tell somebody how to fan. You know, like they want to wear a jersey, cool, so be it. Don't make fun of them for that. They want to refer to the team as we, despite not playing for them. Who cares? Nobody wants to be told how to fan. You fan however you want. Modelo fan rules, brought to you by Modelo. Fan however you want. That's the golden rule of fan rules, by the way.
Modelo fan rule, the golden rule is fan however you want to fan.
Yeah, you fan anyway. Any way you want. However you want, do it. Have it your way. Fan.
Are you excited to be back in studio tomorrow?
Fingers crossed, man. It's it's wild to me how the inability to consistently take care of residential roads. I'm not a mayor, nor am I a public servant, but it feels like there's got to be a better way. And like, I know it doesn't ice or snow that often in Dallas, but it feels like this happens at least once a year. So it'd be better if there was an approach beyond just like, well, wait for everything to melt. It's bizarre.
Well, thanks for the tip on getting my gate open.
Oh,
I took your advice. Yeah.
You did it?
Hot boiling water, a pickaxe, and we were out the door.
Told you that hot water, man. You just got to keep pouring it on. I actually have like a flamethrower at my house. It's kind of small, like not
Time
like,
out. Flamethrower?
Yeah, we can go camping. You got to have a way to quickly light a fire. And so I've got one of those, and I didn't even think to use it. I did all that by hand, and here I am, like with a flamethrower that I could have easily used to open to melt the snow away. But here we are. I also may have lit my gate on fire too, so I'm glad I didn't do it.
Yeah, that would have been bad. You could de-thaw the entire neighborhood with a flamethrower.
Maybe that's what I should do. Just get on the roads and start flamethrowing the roads.
Well, I'm glad you know
that can't be illegal, right?
It's totally fine. You'd be Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation. He's just out there with a flamethrower.
Calling all units. There's a gentleman in the middle of the street with a flamethrower trying to unfreeze the ice so that his kids go back to school finally.
And he's not wearing pants. All right. One of our favorite analytics is Evan Miyakawa and his stuff, evanmiya.com. He has his top 10 teams. He's got Michigan number 1, don't like. But I like Arizona at number 2. He's got Houston at number 5. And he's got Iowa State cracking the top 10 at number 9. And then I look at his top 10 players, and he's got Joshua Jefferson as the 5th most important player in college basketball, the top 10 players. And then he's got Kingston Flemings of Houston at number 7. And a guy that's number 10 is Flory Badunga from Kansas as a top 10 player in terms of offensive and defensive efficiency ratings that he uses on his metrics. But you had the Big 12's best lineups in some jaw-dropping data last week. Any updates on that?
Yeah, so I think it's always fun to kind of look at lineup ratings. So these are the 5, the best 5-man lineups in the Big 12. And, you can toggle the metrics based on the volume of lineups played together. I think last week we talked about, the top with 60 possessions played together. And if you toggle it up to 100, that Baylor lineup with Agbim, Carr, Powell, Skillings, and Yesufu with minimum of 100 possessions is number 1 in offensive and defensive efficiency and observed efficiency margin via Evan Miya. And when you look at the rest of the lineups in this grouping, the number 2 is Chris Sinak, Kingston Flemings, Emmanuel Sharp, Joseph Tugler, Milos Uzan. Iowa State's number 3 with Buchanan, Heisey, Jefferson, Momchilovich, and Toure. Arizona is 4th with Bradley, Berries, Karachenkov, Krivas, and Pete. 5 is another Iowa State lineup: Buchanan, Jefferson, Lipsy, Momchilovich, and Toure. So you take out Heisey, add Lipsy, and you still have one of the best lineups via Evan Miya's efficiency ratings. And then number 6, Flory Badunga, Melvin Council, Darren Peterson, Bryson Tiller, Trey White. So, when you think about who are the best lineups in the Big 12, if I just asked you, you'd probably mention Iowa State has a really good lineup. Houston has a really good lineup. Arizona has a really good lineup. You probably might mention Kansas, especially with Darren Peterson. It's crazy to think that Baylor with Agbim, Carr, Powell, Skillings, and Yesufu continues to be number 1 in the Big 12 for minimum of 100 possessions. And then you go higher to 120, and that's where that Baylor lineup falls off. So to me, I would like to see that lineup more. Maybe it doesn't create, it's not at the same level of efficiency the more possessions it plays together, but couldn't hurt.
Yeah, so has that lineup played 120 possessions together?
No.
And it's just not as efficient, or have they just not been on the floor that many possessions together to where they don't qualify?
So, you look at that lineup, and it is number 1 based on a minimum of 100 possessions. And when you toggle up to 110, the top lineups for Baylor include Rataj, and in both of them. So, not trying to say Rataj is getting too many minutes, but it feels like based on efficiency from Evan Mia that maybe Rataj and Powell should split time a little bit more than they are.
Powell's their big rim protector guy. I mean, Baylor has a game tonight. They play at Cincinnati. It's at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central Time on FS1. To me, this is an elimination game between Baylor and Cincinnati in terms of any chance at all to make a run and be an NCAA tournament team. Baylor, even with their 1-6 Big 12 record and 11-8 overall, is still in a position where if they won 2 or 3 in a row, like they'd be back in the conversation for a bid because they're 59th in the net ranking. They've got a couple of quad 1 wins. Ken Pom has them at number 52 in a top 25 offense, the 18th toughest non-conference strength of schedule in the country. So, I mean, Baylor's in a position where if they can figure a couple of things out and maybe they can make a run. Here's what Baylor guard Tunde Yesufu said about the mentality that Baylor has to have or has had when times have been tough.
Again, just, sacrifice anything you got. Just fight for your brother, whoever is next to you. I think the biggest thing that we all emphasize on throughout this year is in the Bible where, they say you got to, love your neighbors as much as you love yourself, and that's something that we kind of emphasize more and just trying to trust one another and just play together.
Yesufu, by the way, according to Matt Babcock, who's going to join us here in about 10 minutes from Babcock Hoops, does a great job of breaking down NFL or NBA prospects. He's got Yesufu as the number 11th prospect in the country, which is like 6th in the Big 12. Like, that's an NBA-ready player playing for a 1-6 Baylor team.
Well, look, and I mean, important context here. Losses at TCU, Iowa State, Houston, at Kansas, Texas Tech. Now, they have gotten swept by TCU. The one win is Oklahoma State. But aside from the 2 TCU games, Texas Tech, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas. So, I mean, they've cut into the teeth of their Big 12 schedule. And, I mean, where's Cincinnati ranked? Are they net top 75?
Cincinnati is currently 78.
So this would be a quad 2 game for them tonight against Cincinnati at Cincinnati. But then at West Virginia, Colorado, they get Iowa State again, BYU. Then they play Louisville out of conference, which is a tough one. So, I mean, look, this is definitely a elimination game, if you will, for Cincinnati. I still think Baylor could lose this one and, still get in. But, yeah, I mean, it would be a very tough loss for them to fall. Like, I think you mentioned this earlier, like this is kind of a play-in game. And it would not go well if Baylor does not win this game. They'd be 1-7. It'd be in a really tough spot, but I still think they've got a path. Cincinnati, I'm not sure does.
To me, this is the point in Baylor's season where they have to make a run. And it's their best window because they're at Cincinnati and then they play at West Virginia on Saturday. And I know West Virginia is unbeaten at home, but they've had some close ones like the Kansas State game last night. And then Baylor's back at home against Colorado. So they don't play a ranked team over the next 2 weeks. Then they're at Iowa State and BYU. That Louisville game, which maybe that's like a fresh start for them because it's on a neutral floor. It's a non-conference game. Louisville won't be as familiar with Baylor as some of these Big 12 teams and the way they play. And Baylor, I watched them, and with Cameron Carr and Yesufu and Agbem, there are pieces there. Like, they are a team that shouldn't be 1-6. Even James Najee coming off the bench is just a monster. So it's hard for me to figure out why they're struggling as much as they are when they're scoring 80 or 90 a game.
Well, it's their defense. Yeah, it's their defense. And, I mean, it's where are they in the Ken Pom defensive ratings? I mean, in the hundreds, I think, maybe even 200s.
Yeah, 135th.
And that's where I think the Powell lineup, it makes them so much better defensively. Now, I wonder if Scott Drew's feeling on that is there's diminishing returns over a period of time because Powell's a liability on the offensive end. But I mean, these lineup numbers are glaring, and you'd like to see more of that lineup just to see how it, how much better it could make Baylor. Again, when you're thinking about like these lineups make a ton of sense for being the top lineups in the Big 12. So it's not like there's one outlier here in a sea of lineups that make a ton of sense in terms of being the top lineups in the Big 12.
Houston at TCU tonight at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on ESPN2. That's a road game for Houston. It's in Fort Worth. Houston did not make it back home, so they went from Lubbock to Fort Worth to play this game tonight. Coming off a loss, they're 17-2, but TCU is scrappy, and this is a chance for TCU to play their way in to the tournament with a month and a half to go before Selection Sunday. This would put them at 14-7 and 4-4 in Big 12. This is a house money game in my eyes for TCU at home against one of the elite programs and teams in the country. But this is a tricky spot for me and this Houston team that, what's their practice schedule been like? Where have they been working out? Like, just to be on the road for this long of a stretch, I just think could potentially throw them out of whack.
That's why I don't know that this is necessarily a house money game for TCU, because you've got a weird travel situation with Houston. By the way, after this game, it could be tough for them to get out as well. Hopefully the temperature stays, high enough, but we're still overnight, below freezing. So it just allows for slush during the day and then that to refreeze overnight. So who knows what their travel plan is following this game, because the DFW area is still under a sheet of ice. And look, I think TCU's greatest strength is forcing turnovers, getting out in fast break scoring. They're third in the Big 12 in fast break points at 16 points a game. They force 14.5 turnovers per game. The issue here is Houston does not turn the basketball over very much. They're among the nation's best at 8.5 turnovers per game. So it feels like the area that's the biggest strength of TCU plays into the biggest strength, or one of the biggest strengths of Houston. And so they're going to have to figure out a way to generate more turnovers than Houston's used to. And then, of course, don't get destroyed on the glass. I mean, David Punch has been sort of an interior anchor for them, but I mean, he's going to need to be huge in this game because Houston, as we've seen, can absolutely bury you on the glass. I also don't expect them to lose 2 games in a row, Houston, but it could happen, especially given their difficulty of schedule of travel this week. So not much on paper you could point to, but I think that there are some things from a TCU standpoint that give them a good opportunity to win this game. And they haven't really punched up. We've talked about it. The Big 12 at the top is beating itself up to a degree. Obviously, Arizona's still without a loss, so it remains to be seen how much Arizona can contend with some of the top teams, or other teams in the top of the Big 12 can contend with Arizona. But TCU feels like they're a clear mid-level team that anytime they go up against the elite of the Big 12, they lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, TCU is currently top 50 in KenPom. They're 44th in the net rankings. This is a win that would put them in when you look at Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology. He has them part of the first 4 out, but the other teams grouped there with them, like a New Mexico who's 1-3 in quad 1 games, a Santa Clara who's 1-3 in quad 1 games as at-large bids. TCU's 3-4. They've got 3 wins against quad 1 opponents. UCLA's 2-5 in quad 1. This is a tremendous opportunity for them to get on the right side of the bubble if they were to somehow pull that upset tonight on ESPN2.
And by the way, Houston has lost 4 of their last 5 at TCU. So TCU has had some success at home. Last year, the game was in Houston, but 4 of their last 5 home meetings against Houston, TCU has won, including a 68-67 upset of number 2 Houston in 2024.
Okay, so 2 years ago, TCU got them at home.
Yep. However, Kelvin Sampson is 32-2 all time since 2017 after a loss.
The after a loss, yeah, that's the thing. The after the loss, and I don't know where they were working out or where they were practicing,
right,
or where they've been running the last couple of days, but it's somewhere. All right,
I also think, so how many teams right now in the Big 12 have just one conference loss? Texas Tech, Houston.
Texas Tech, Houston, Arizona has none.
Has none, right?
Iowa State has 2 because they got upset by Cincinnati.
And Kansas.
Yeah. Let's see. Men's basketball.
BYU.
Now BYU's got 2. They lost to Arizona and they lost to Texas Tech. So there's only 3 teams: Arizona, Texas Tech, and Houston.
So, if Houston loses this one, I mean, Houston has not lost more than 2 Big 12 games any year it's been in the Big 12, but certainly you'd think if they lost tonight that, they'd be positioned to lose more than 2. I don't know how often Arizona's going to lose. It feels like 2 losses is more than Arizona is going to lose this year. So, it feels like the Houston's reign on the Big 12 is up in the air. Like, it feels like 1 loss is probably the target here in terms of Big 12 losses. So a loss here is an unexpected loss for a Houston team that hasn't lost very much in the Big 12.
Yeah, Arizona and Texas Tech fans will be big TCU fans tonight. A Houston loss would put them at 5-2, and then you'd have a 4-way tie for third with Houston, Iowa State, BYU, and Kansas.
Yeah.
And TCU would climb into 7th in the Big 12 standings. No, I beg your pardon. TCU's a game and a half back from UCF and West Virginia, who are both quietly 5-3 with their wins last night. And you get to 9 or 10 wins in this league. I mean, UCF and West Virginia are pacing for a 10-8 record in Big 12 play. Both of those teams should be in the field. I don't care what West Virginia did in the non-conference. You win 10 games in this league, you're in. Coming up next year on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, Matt Babcock from BabcockHoops.com, NBA draft analyst. He's got great stuff. We'll talk with him about all these high-profile Big 12 basketball players, their draft stock. Is it soaring? Is it sliding? We'll break it down with Matt after the timeout. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn.
Here are the top plays from this week's Freshman of the Week.
Nichols giving it up. Vandell. Skip pass. Inside to Davis. She's not going to miss from there. 20 seconds on the shot clock. He's in his 11th season at Kansas. Davis corrals. Drives. That's nice. And that's why he goes by Coach Brandon instead of Coach Schneider, because he says his pops is Coach Schneider. Davis with a terrific finish. Jalea Davis was a 5-star prospect, the highest ranked recruit signed.
And a career high 4 for 5 free throws.
Davis.
Well, she is bringing out her jumper from the perimeter. She can play.
Inside to Davis all alone. That is easy pickings. Vandell to Davis calling for it against the taller Magat. No problem.
She is so quick.
Under 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. Kansas has led by as many as a dozen. Davis, second effort. Oh, yeah, go ahead and flex. Inside to Nichols, who kicks it back out. Davis, skip pass, gets it back. Mouse in the house, she's got 16.
Well, they move the ball really well.
Going 3 for 4. Vandell gets it back. Williams inside to Davis, and she's not going to miss from there. She's got 18. 30-win season for Burke before she was tapped on the shoulder to take over here in Tucson. Inside to Davis, and she's got a 20-piece for the 7th time this season.
Meister started every game she's played, all 20 this season, inside the paint.
Keep his elite scorers on the floor. That's going to be Sides and Classens and others. But right now, it's the 1-2 punch high-low. And
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio. We are brought to you, the Full-Time Fan, by Modelo, here exclusively on TuneIn, and you're watching us on the Big 12 Fast Channel, Big 12 Studios. With Ari Timken, I'm James Westling, and with all the NBA talent in this Big 12 basketball conference, it's never too early to take a look at the upcoming NBA draft, and we welcome in Matt Babcock from Babcock Hoops. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Man, huge fan of your website. We were just talking during the break about you being kind of headquartered there in Denver and all the great Big 12 basketball players in this league. But I want to start with this pinned tweet that you have about playing in the NBA. And you were sharing kind of some tips on maximizing potential, not just on the floor, but off the floor as well. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I did it for my podcast a little while back, and just I guess to give a little bit of my background. I grew up in basketball. My dad and my uncles all working at high levels and NBA front offices, and really kind of worn a bunch of different hats in the game, and have seen a lot, for better or for worse. And it was really trying to give a tip that I think that was last season, probably around this time, and really just trying, a lot of players and parents and coaches follow my stuff, and really just looking to motivate people when we're kind of in mid-season grind. I think from a scout's perspective, I think it's pretty easy these days to identify who has talent. But I mean, the reality is we're projecting what these players are going to be, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And it's really a lot of the little things of guys that could really become pros and kind of handle their business day in, day out when the bright lights are off. And so that's kind of where that, stemmed from.
On Saturday, we've got quite the matchup of the Big 12, and a big reason to have you on this week was to talk about Darren Peterson and AJ DeBonsa, the presumptive top 2 picks, the upcoming NBA draft. What I guess stands out to you about both of those guys, and do you think there's a case to be made for AJ at number 1?
To answer the second question, yes, I do. I'm at kind of the point where it's sort of a 1A, 1B type of situation, and really kind of pick your poison. I mean, both are 2 of the best prospects I've ever evaluated at this stage. Obviously, Darren, with these lingering injury issues, I mean, that's pretty frustrating. I know it's frustrating for KU fans, and I'm sure during the pre-draft process, NBA teams are going to want to get their hands on those medicals to make sure there's nothing more than just annoying injuries that are kind of lingering. But from a talent standpoint, they're not exactly the same player, but both have the chance of being offensive engines. I mean, premier scorers. Darren Peterson's this combo guard that checks all these boxes. And I mean, I've seen the comps and Twitter and whatnot of Kobe Bryant and stuff like that. And I don't think that's a perfect comparison. But as far as a 6'6", guard that can kind of do it all, he fits that mold. And I think one thing that's a little bit different with Darren, he's not quite the athlete of a Kobe Bryant, but he is a far better shooter. And I think a guy that's at this stage 6'6", does all the things, and then he's also an elite shooter on and off the ball. That's unique. And then with AJ, another unique player that checks a lot of boxes, but this is a 6'9" guy that's pretty much an elite one-on-one player, especially in the triple threat, which is unique in its own right, and kind of shades of like a young Carmelo Anthony. I mean, I think his footwork is so advanced. He's very physical, very much like an alpha dog, a little bit of a throwback, playing a lot in the mid-range and really kind of get into his spots, get into the line, similar to a Carmelo, at a similar stage. And a good problem to have if you're one of these teams drafted at the top, because like I said, I think it's sort of 1A, 1B, pick your poison.
Yeah, I'm also on that front. As a Kansas fan, it's been an odd year certainly. How will NFL teams evaluate this season with being in a lineup, injury stuff? Like, do you think that will matter at all or factor in at all? Will it be a question that comes up? How do you think NBA teams will handle the situation he's had?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a looming question on some level or another. And as far as the reliability of what information you're actually getting from his circle or the coaches, I don't know. I think that's a lot of like these NBA front office jobs. A lot of these scouts have their jobs, being able to kind of filter through, what's good intel, what's not. But the players union in the NBA, put some new things in place with the last CBA negotiation, to where these teams that will be drafted in this range will have access to his medical information. And so I don't see a scenario where a team drafting one or two, aren't doing their due diligence and figuring out what they're signing up for. I mean, it's almost like getting a Carfax, right? You're not buying a used car that's damaged.
Talking with Matt Babcock from BabcockHoops.com. Their big board has Peterson 1, DeBonsa 2, and then Kingston Flemings from Houston at number 5, Koa Pete at Arizona number 8. And then I look like the rest of the first round. You still have Tunde Yesufu from Baylor at number 12, Cameron Carr from Baylor at number 16, Sanak from Houston at 18, and then Christian Anderson, Texas Tech, Braden Burries, Arizona. Like, there are so many NBA players in this Big 12. So how would you evaluate, like, guys that are right now, 10 through 30 on your board?
I do think it's very fluid at this point. I think it's seeming like the top 4 or 5 are starting to separate a little bit. I mean, Kingston Flemings has just been incredible, and a pretty interesting guy that he played on a smaller AAU circuit. And I think because of that, he didn't have quite as much hype coming into his freshman year. I mean, people knew who he was and everything, but what wasn't somebody that we expected to be a top 5 pick. And stepping into Kelvin Sampson's system that is obviously proven, and a bunch of established players. And I mean, I was in the players there in Vegas. I got to watch them closely for several days early in the season. And at that point, you could tell he had already earned Kelvin's trust, the team's trust. Everybody's deferring to this young freshman, and it was just really, really impressive to see. And he's really kind of created a snowball effect of just his production, and he's playing with so much confidence. And I mean, I see him being a guy that has star potential as well. And, past him, as I mentioned, I do think it's somewhat fluid. I mean, the big board I did, that was a few weeks ago. I'm already looking to change it up. But I think there's so much talent. It's kind of similar to what we're saying with the top 2 picks, even in the mid-late lottery. It's a lot of the same sort of narratives of just which direction do you want to go. There's a lot of good options.
What's your read on JT Toppin? It's a guy that was a player of the year last year in the Big 12. We think about kind of him as a throwback big, but a guy that has shown he could step out and shoot a little bit. What's your read on Toppin as being a first-round pick?
He's an interesting name. I mean, he's so dang effective in college, and I'm really impressed with the Texas Tech team. I think Grant McCasland's a terrific coach, and JT's a huge part of what they're doing, and he just produces. And so, I mean, on some level or another, you can't ignore that. I think looking at it glass half empty, he's a little bit of a throwback. I mean, most of his work is around the rim. He's a little undersized for his time. He's really kind of like an undersized big man, like a 5-man, even though he's in like a 4-man's body. He's very left-handed, but I mean, he's an incredible rebounder. He just finds a way to put it in the hole. I don't see him being a guy that will be able to stretch the floor much, which is making guys like him somewhat polarizing from an NBA evaluation standpoint. And I think depending on which team you're looking at, which scout you're talking to, I think we'll have a bigger emphasis on that idea more than others. But I think he's got a chance to be a first round. He needs to find the right team, or vice versa, that kind of sees him and values him for what he is.
What's your take, Matt, on the ripple effects of NIL and the impact that it has on the NBA draft? And if guys were going straight from high school, there's a dozen guys in the Big 12 that we probably wouldn't get the chance to see play Big 12 basketball. But also, like, second-round picks, guys coming back to college because they can get paid now. What's the greatest impact that you've seen that's the biggest change?
Well, we probably need a whole separate show just for this topic. But yeah, I mean, the ripple effects are dramatic, and I mean, there's a lot of conversations. I had several calls with teams yesterday. Everybody just trying to figure out, I mean, with some of these players becoming eligible. I mean, Bediako at Alabama. I mean, that's raising a lot of questions of what happens, with some of these players that enter the draft, and what if the agent, tries to leverage this in negotiations, or having their kid go back to school. And then obviously just the kids that, in years past would have entered the draft and probably would have stayed in the draft. I'm expecting most of those type of guys to go back to school. Like when in doubt, go back to school. And I mean, the second round, they're fully negotiable deals, which could be a good thing for a kid, but also could end up being a two-way contract or leaving a lot of money on the table in college to probably play in the G League quite a bit, which is just not as glamorous of a lifestyle as being at one of these Power Four schools.
Yeah, well said. And I think that there are a ton of implications for this potentially. I mean, think about, the freshman that puts his name in the draft who doesn't get drafted and then blows up his next year, now becomes what, an NBA free agent because he went undrafted in his first year of eligibility.
Right. No, and I don't think there's a whole lot of clarity right now. I'm hoping the NBA is getting organized and figuring out, kind of sending out some kind of memo before the draft so these teams know what they're going into draft night. As I understand it right now, that there's still a lot of questions as far as how this will function with these hypothetical scenarios. And but yeah, I mean, my every time this topic comes up, my wheels got spinning. And I was a sports agent for 10 years. I'm a recovering sports agent, and this is pretty interesting times.
Yeah, well said.
Matt, anything you can share with us from that side of things as a former sports agent in this world of NIL and what it's like behind the scenes?
I think it's mass chaos. I do see this as opportunities for agents. I mean, they're able to. It's a whole new revenue stream. They're able to sign clients a lot earlier. I mean, a lot of these agencies are signing these kids when they're still in high school, and so it's a lot of new business. It's guys that didn't make much money before that are now making quite a bit. I'm expecting over time that part of it to probably change as they, the college basketball landscape kind of gets a little more organized and structured. But I mean, and then the whole idea too of like if they're possibly able to create leverage, even if it's just sort of an idle threat of like having these drafted players return to school, that's leverage and negotiations you didn't have before. And so even if it is a bluff or BS, I mean, it's a card you could potentially play now.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
I'm curious, just like from a scout's eye, what should we be watching for on Saturday when BYU and Kansas play? Like, what are scouts going to be looking at when they're watching that game?
Well, I mean, hoping Peterson plays, right? So I mean, there's something to evaluate. I think at this stage, I mean, both have proven to be elite prospects. I don't think many people or anybody's questioning that. Now it's just how much do you value what they bring to the table and style play. I mean, I think some people. I mean, a lot of people value one guy more than the other for whatever reasons. Maybe it's just preference of style of playing basketball or how they're building their team or how they might coexist with what they have in place or the coaching staff they have in place. Things like that. And so, I mean, I think, this time of year is when I start looking at shifting my focus from being like a big board rankings, which admittedly can be somewhat arbitrary at times, to looking at a mock draft, which is really where it matters. Because like, where the guy actually gets drafted is all that matters at the end of the day. Who cares about the rankings when it's all said and done? And so now I start looking at teams, what they're doing at the trade deadline, how their like long-term roster buildings kind of taking shape, salary cap, free agency plans, stuff like that. And so really trying to figure out where these guys fit into this imminent, pro basketball ecosystem.
Awesome stuff. Matt Babcock from Babcock Hoops, babcockhoops.com. Matt, when our audience hits up your website, what are they going to find?
A lot of basketball content, a lot of it NBA draft related. We're doing profile pieces on some prospects, rankings. I've got a full scouting staff that I oversee, and we've pretty much got comprehensive scouting reports on just about everybody in the draft. That's still a work in progress. We've got a few guys we're still trying to get in there, but continuing to tighten that up. And I travel aggressively watching these players in person and watching a lot of film, and so just more and more content, prospects and basketball as a whole.
Man, it looks great. Full of Big 12 big names at babcockhoops.com. Matt, appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See ya. Matt Babcock, NBA draft analyst for Babcock Hoops, babcockhoops.com. The big game on Saturday, Kansas and BYU, the top two projected picks in the upcoming NBA draft will square off on Saturday at 4 Eastern, 3 o'clock Central Time. It is our Big 12 radio game of the week. Bonsa and BYU against hopefully Peterson
and Kansas on Saturday. We'll wrap up the show with the final whistle coming up next. This is the Big 12 Conference brought to you by Modelo. This is a different league. Here are the top plays from this week's Player of the Week.
It seemed like maybe that made sense, and that's part of why they were playing so many players, but they have since pulled that off. Iowa State.
Jada will launch and hit the second triple of the night for Iowa State. Jada with the step back.
Defense we saw very early in the game.
Williams will try to get the answer and does. Williams for three. 27 on the night. Now for Jada Williams. Down to three. Jada fires and hits. What a night! That's the end of the third quarter. You're watching Big 12 basketball here on ESPN+.
With Audie Cripps, you can't just let her come do whatever she wants to do. You've got to have some contact with her. Oh, losing everybody. Layup is good. Williams with the bucket.
Just controlling the tempo in this game early. This is what she does best. You see the defender, Cornfield, she gets her on her heels.
Williams, her former team, gonna have an and one and go to the line. What an addition she's been, though, for the Cyclones.
Finish at the rim. She's so good with the ball in her hands. You see how explosive her foot on the game, 57%, but in this quarter, 67% for three.
Yeah, inside, outside, it's all been clicking for the Cyclones as Williams adds to her totals now on Arizona. Magat's picking up her fourth. She'll take a seat.
Just look at Jada Williams' ball handling, though. The way she's able to control the ball and get whatever she...
It's Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn one final time. He's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling.
by tomorrow, we are hoping, fingers crossed, to be in studio, live and in person. Ari, Taman, James, Anthony, the whole team.
Curious, James, have you been thriving indoors?
Thriving indoors. This is my element. This is my element. There's no, okay. I don't know that there's, well, let me start with this. I've never seen my wife more calm in this setting, knowing that she's indoors, stuck in the house all day, but so is everybody else. Which is there's a major difference between being inside all day when everybody else is out running around and being trapped inside when everybody else is trapped inside, right?
So your wife is big into FOMO. Is that what I'm understanding here?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that. Fear of missing out.
Doesn't want to miss out.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are running around, having fun outside, and she's not, that's a disaster.
Sets her nervous system ablaze.
Got it. Okay.
But knowing everybody else is stuck inside, she is in the zone, in a real flow state.
Ooh. I've got a great idea now. I may just have to meander over to your neighborhood and bring my kids to go play outside right in front of your windows. I think that's what I'm going to spend my time doing today.
Make a lot of noise, make it sound like there's a lot happening outdoors.
In fact, I may just invite a bunch of people over and hang out on your front lawn to have a party. I might get a DJ and everything. Bring some Modelo's.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, you've challenged me, and I am up for the challenge, James. I am up for the challenge. My task, should I choose to accept it, is to make Lacey fear missing out on this big party we're going to have outside.
Please do. She told me the other day that she really thrived. Her exact words were, "I thrived during COVID."
Which is not I don't think that's something that most people can say.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. It was not a bright spot.
No, it wasn't. Thriving wouldn't be, nor would I say the situation I'm in currently, I would not describe as thriving.
Yeah, so what are you going to do this weekend?
It's weekend. It's Wednesday.
Well, you said you have to be out of your house on Friday, right?
Oh, yeah. 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 So we're going to be at an Airbnb. It's in the same neighborhood. We had another option that was pretty close to your house, James, like walking distance. And we're like, oh, no, can't do that. No, absolutely not. No, that's, yeah, way too far out of our neighborhood.
Why not?
Yeah, it was too far. Just too far would be the best way to describe it.
Okay. I mean, I think the roads should be fine by then. I really do. I think everything should be okay.
But yeah, I mean, when you've been living in a house for a week that doesn't have a kitchen sink, and so you're having to do your dishes in your bathroom sink, really any house looks attractive because that's kind of where I'm at. I walk into a friend's house down the street and it's like, oh, you've got a kitchen with a sink and dishwasher. What a nice aspect of your kitchen. I wish mine had that. Would love for it to someday have a sink, flooring, and dishwasher. Maybe someday it will.
It's all perspective.
Right.
It's all perspective. All right. So what time are we safe to venture out of the house today?
Do I look like a meteorologist to you?
Yeah, you know things, dude. You're super smart.
I mean, it's
what? You're a smart guy. You should
This
know.
show is in trouble if I'm like the smart one.
Yeah, dude, you're driving the bus, all right? You're driving the IQ engine.
Well, I
Come
mean,
on
it's
now.
clearly sunny outside. So that is just from a weatherman's perspective. As a meteorologist, I can see the sun. That's helpful. That seems helpful. It also appears to be 32 degrees according to my Apple Watch.
Oh, we're good.
Another meteorologist.
We're so
But
good.
we just got to get north of that number for a sustained period of time with the sun and then not go back to freezing overnight because then we're back seemingly to square one.
I'm calling it now. We're in studio tomorrow. It's going to be 34 degrees at 6 a.m. We're good to go. So we ventured out yesterday, and I like 2 blocks into our trip, I was like, take me back home. It's not safe out here. Like, there weren't a lot of people out, but the people that were on the roads clearly had no interest in arriving to their destination safely or in one piece.
Yeah, a lot of drivers I've seen have not exactly adjusted their driving style to fit the icy roads. And that is, for me, extremely problematic with the Dallas driver, is the ability to adjust to certain circumstances, this being one of them. And so, like, I was driving and I'm at a stop sign and I see a car coming up behind me and I'm like, they should probably have already started stopping. So it forces me, when somebody's behind me and I see them coming up a little bit too quickly, especially if I'm stopped, like, I'm going to roll the next stop sign because I'm not going to get hit from behind from somebody that doesn't understand how quickly, they've got to brake a lot quicker than they're braking. That's been my biggest issue, is the inability to understand, like, you got to adjust your driving. Like, I'm a pretty aggressive driver. I think you know that. And I'm not getting past 15 miles per hour on these roads.
No. And I do know that. And I think that the aggression ratchets it up. I think people are more aggressive on the road, like they're trying to beat the sun. Like, the sun will go down at a reasonable hour. Hey, Taman, let's play this. I want to get Ari's thoughts on what Jerome Tang said about the NCAA rules holding K-State basketball back.
Together a team and build a program that will be on that level year in and year out. And I ain't figured that out yet because they keep changing the rules on me, right? Like, once they get the rules set, right, like, then I can have a consistent plan, because there are 3 guys that should be on my roster right now that are not.
Jerome Tang, there are 3 players that should be on K-State's roster that are not on their roster. I know one of the 3. One of the 3 was a guy that they signed a year ago at semester, Tyreek Smith, who was a really good player at Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, and then he transferred to Memphis. K-State had signed him, but he didn't get his waiver cleared. He's a post player who was one of the top shot blockers in the Big 12 when he was here, really good rebounder, everything K-State seems to be missing. I don't know who the other 2 guys would be, but is this Crimea River?
I mean, do I need to tell you, yes, that it is? I mean, last I checked, whatever the rules are, everybody is subject to them. Now, maybe Jerome Tang is upset with the way that the waiver process has been handled, but I mean, last I checked, they're all recruiting under the same rules here. So yeah, this definitely sounds like a convenient excuse. And I can't be certain, James, but so I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Feels like this is an excuse. Like, he's gone down this well before with this exact excuse in previous years. Is that fair? And maybe it was dressed up a little bit differently in terms of, like, maybe it wasn't about waivers, about something else, but it feels like he's constantly complaining about the rules vis-a-vis his roster.
Yeah, I think that was last season. There were some comments that, like you said, weren't dressed up in the exact same way. But the bottom line is K-State's had 4 teams during his tenure that have been entirely new rosters. I mean, a complete overhaul. And the guys that do come back, like David Gasson may have been K-State's best player last year. David Castillo might be K-State's best player this year because those guys chose to come back. For whatever reason, guys are departing. And teams lose transfers. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not out of the ordinary to lose 7, 8, 9 of your top guys. But to lose 12 or 13 every year and have a completely new team, that is a problem when you're trying to build a program. So he's got a massive buyout. This offseason is going to be interesting in Manhattan. But Kansas State, like, they've had so many close losses where down the stretch they just completely fall apart.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Jerome Tang built up a ton of goodwill after his first year, Elite 8 run, and it feels like that is more and more the anomaly in terms of the full breadth of the 4 years that he's been there. And I'm assuming extremely disappointing for K-State fans. And, look, part of Jerome Tang's mantra at K-State, based on things he says, is, a familial environment, leading the man, not the player, right? Like, these are things that just from a culture standpoint seems to be huge aspects of his roster and his team. And it feels like that doesn't fit the output. Like, the things that he said on roster building and on team and players, I mean, maybe they're just straight up losing guys because they're getting paid more to go elsewhere. But it just feels like for a guy that
really hammered in on the idea that, he was about family and, treating, coaching the guys, not the players, and in life, not just in basketball. Those are things that would have some shelf life for continuity amongst a roster that they just haven't had. Now, look, Baylor, he comes from Baylor, right? And so Scott Drew's dealt with the same thing. McCasland's maybe a little bit different, has evolved a bit, and certainly has spent time. Remember, Tang went straight from Baylor to K-State, whereas McCasland has, had a few stops as a coach, a head coach previously. So maybe that's a huge distinction and difference there. But it's sort of interesting, right? I mean, I think Tang's built his roster in a lot of ways the same way that Drew has. And you could see that the output doesn't really match what you'd expect based on that culture that comes from Scott Drew.
And the best player, arguably, on his Elite Eight team was Marquise Noel, who was a holdover, who was in his third year in the program, even though he'd been under Bruce Weber and a different staff. Like, the guys that have shined at Baylor and Kansas State are the guys that are there for multiple seasons. And every year I look at Jerome Tang's K-State roster, and I think, man, if these guys come back, they could be really good next year, because they always have a ton of really productive underclassmen that just aren't quite there yet, and he can't get them to stay. So that's incredibly well stated, because I've had the same thoughts.
Well, and all this is going on. Meanwhile, with Kansas State women's basketball, they've had to bench their best player, Tess Heel, who signed with a Australian pro team to start after she graduates, but basically the NCAA has made her ineligible because she's already signed, which, obviously these are things we've talked about vis-a-vis on the men's side with guys, signing and playing professional contracts overseas and then coming and playing. I guess the distinction here is that those contracts have ended. Those pro contracts that some of these players have signed have ended. But it's funny we're hearing Jerome Tang complain about some of the NCAA rules. Meanwhile, on the women's side, the season's gone horribly wrong for a program that's been at the top of the Big 12 for years now. And now they've had to basically sit their best player because the NCAA is saying that she's not eligible to play because she's already signed with an Australian pro team. If I were K-State, I'd try to get a judge in the state of Kansas that supports K-State athletics to basically rule against the NCAA and hold this up in the same way that Charles Bediako's deal has been held up in Alabama courts.
Yep. That's the key. That's the key. Make it make sense. All right. Special thanks to Matt Babcock, our NBA draft analyst from Babcock Hoops. He joined us. Chris Cartman, owner-publisher of Sun Devil Source, was on the program to break down Arizona State football and their transfer portal class. And then we had Keenan Cummings, the managing editor for WVSports.com, to talk all things West Virginia. We're back tomorrow, 8 to 11 Eastern time, right here on the channel. He's Ari Timken for our producer, Taman Turner, for Anthony Smith on the Big 12 studio side. You've been watching and listening to Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, brought to you, the Full-Time Fan, by Modelo. This is the Big 12 Conference. This is a different league. We're out.
Peace.